shut up now.
That's not very nice.
Alright. Who are you talking to?
You.
What did I do?
You said shut up, and I said that's not very nice.
Oh, I wasn't talking to you.
Yeah, sure. Whatever.
No, I was talking to Christina.
Yeah. Whatever, man. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tim and Andy Show on RetroVolve.com. This is the 4th episode of the Tim and Andy Show, and we are not at a bar this week. There's a lot less background noise, although that was a lot of fun doing it there, but it
was. You
could definitely tell it was in a different environment than the usual, but it was fun, and it's something we probably will do again in the future. Maybe with a little more sophisticated of a setup next time so you can hear everything, but...
We'll go earlier in the day so there'll be less people.
Right. Well, the thing is, when we got there, there was, nobody there. And, right as we started recording the podcast, just people started filing in left and right.
I think it's because we had the meeting first. We had a website meeting.
Yeah, exactly. In which we just sat around and bullshit around for, 2 hours.
That's a website meeting.
Yeah.
It involved beer and bullshit.
Yeah. Two of my favorite things.
Yeah, not mixed, though. Ooh.
Yeah. No. Not directly mixed.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
In the literal sense of the term bullshit.
Bullshit brew.
I think we just came up with a name for our first microbrew that I just decided that we're going to do now. We do retro video games and home brewing on RetroVolve.com.
Fecal flavored suds.
And it's going to be made out of ingredients that are all at least 30 years old, so
yeah, it's
going to be delicious.
Retro beer.
Bullshit brew, retro beer from RetroVolve.com. You heard it here, folks. Here first, folks.
Made with only the oldest of ingredients.
Oldest and shittiest of ingredients. It'll be like the Werewolf Last Warrior of beer.
Except shitty, because Werewolf Last Warrior is amazing.
Yeah. I maybe spoke a little out of turn there. So it'll be the most amazing beer ever. And it's going to have... I was thinking this week, I want to, we need to, produce a shirt with that end screen of the Werewolf the Last Warrior with Stay Classic written under it.
Yeah,
I think we'd sell at least 2.5 million of those. At least.
Well, I looked into it, and Data East is dissolved completely, and it doesn't look like anyone has the rights to Werewolf the Last Warrior, so...
So we can just,
we can actually get the rights to the game. That'd be amazing.
I'm going to go, I'll go dig around in the change bin I have to do laundry, and I bet you if I scrounge up all the change in there that I have, maybe a couple bucks from my wallet, you bring it to wherever, I bet you could get the rights to that game.
Probably.
And we could make the long-awaited sequel somehow.
Werewolf the really last warrior.
The lastest warrior.
The lastest warrior, yeah.
Something like that. I know nothing about computer programming or anything, but we could figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Can't be that hard.
At least make a product as good as Werewolf the Last Warrior.
Well, let's not get carried away.
Let's not get crazy.
I mean, people have tried for centuries to make something as iconic as the Mona Lisa, and I think it's fair to say that Werewolf the Last Warrior is the Mona Lisa of the video game medium, is it not?
I think so. I think that might be an understatement, even.
Yeah. Who painted the Mona Lisa? Picasso?
No. I don't know why it's escaping me right now, but...
We know video games. We know little to nothing about anything else, apparently.
Yeah.
But whoever that guy was, he ain't got shit on Werewolf. No. Anyways, so we'll save the audience from more werewolf talk. I'm pretty sure everybody's turned it off by now anyways, so...
Oh, they're just talking about that werewolf game again.
God damn it, these fucking guys.
I got socks that I could be organizing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, before we started, I was going to just talk a little bit about what's been going on at RetroVolve.com this week. We've had quite a bit of content this week.
Really?
Yeah, from you. Well, yeah, from you and from Mandy and
No,
Josh.
not from me. I haven't done shit this week.
You did a couple of things.
Did I?
Yeah. I think one thing I didn't read yet, I should have, but was your article on the review of College Football USA '96.
I put that up a week ago and you haven't read it? Jesus Christ.
I know. But no, I haven't read that yet.
Don't worry, nobody else did either.
Do you just want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, it actually, I think I put it up about a week. It was early last week. I don't fucking remember. It's about a review that was published by accident in a video game magazine in the 90s called Game Fan, which I don't remember. Some people might.
I had a subscription to it.
Shit. Well, you maybe had this issue at one point.
I got the first issue, the first 12 issues of that magazine because I thought it was the next big thing, and I was super into magazines at the time.
Yeah, and I actually did, after I wrote that article, I researched after I posted it, of course, logically.
Of course, yeah.
Being the cream of the crop journalist that I am. But I actually did find out that the reason they kind of had any sort of popularity is that they had really high quality screenshots in their magazine, which nobody else had at the time.
Yeah, they were super. That was actually one of the things that really drew me to the magazine. Is not only did they have high quality screenshots, but their paper was really nice. Everything was set up really comfortably for reading. The covers were really glossy, and I'm pretty sure, considering my age, another thing was that they had hot chicks.
Yeah.
Strewn throughout the magazine too.
That still gets me to buy shit to this day.
Of course. But I'm just saying, especially when you're 16 or whatever.
Right, exactly.
You're
but anyway,
this magazine talk about video games and boobies?
Yeah,
I need this.
Exactly. What more do you really want?
Yeah, exactly.
But this particular article was printed by accident. It was supposed to be about some football game called College Football '96 or something. That doesn't matter because the actual review had nothing to do with that game whatsoever. Instead, it was filler text that was done as a joke by a editor there at Game Fan that was just in the most horrible broken English, run-on sentences, no punctuation ever. It's horribly racist. And it's
wow.
And it appears to be about Ace Combat for the PlayStation. Is what this review actually seems to be about. And at one point, he refers to Namco as those little jet bastards. And
holy shit!
Yeah, and this got printed. This was sent out to subscribers, and it was
this the nail in the coffin for the magazine? Because that's a pretty big faux pas.
It actually wasn't. They survived for 3 or 4 years after this.
That's pathetic.
Right. But the funniest part to me is how they tried to cover it up is they blamed it on some external distribution partner that put together, printed the magazine or whatever, that they changed it and they put in this wrong review in order to sabotage their relationships with the Asian gaming market. So but then it came out not too long later, no, there's just some guy that works here just did this as a joke and we forgot about it. So
this guy who used to work here,
right?
He's been terminated.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's I have the scan of the actual review in that article, so you should check it out just because it's funny. It just, I don't know. It's really dumb, but I thought it was completely hilarious. That where was the editor? Come on.
Yeah, the editor was writing that stupid trip.
Right. But yeah, I got that up, and then I think
it's fun. I'm gonna go back and read that.
Yeah, it's entertaining if nothing else. But then I also did a video review for King of the Monsters for the Neo Geo.
Oh yeah,
which is the shit.
That was a great video too.
Yeah,
you should definitely check that out.
Yeah,
that game is awesome.
Oh, it's so good. I mean,
both of those games are really good.
There's nothing to it. You just mash buttons and power bomb reptiles through stadiums. But I mean,
if you liked the old game Rampage, the old arcade / home computer game Rampage, this is totally in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
It's just a 3-dimensional beat-em version of just that.
Yeah, it's like a pro wrestling game, but you're these monsters and you destroy a city.
The arena is a city.
Yeah, and it's you're doing actual
so awesome.
pro wrestling moves, and you you Irish whip a guy and he bounds off like this energy field on the side of the city, and he comes back at you and you can drop kick him, and like it's all like pro wrestling moves but monsters, and like you can throw airplanes. So it's obviously great. I mean, there's really not much to it. You just mash buttons. I never really figured out how to do much of anything, but I was entertained by it, and I very much enjoyed the game.
Oh yeah, it's mindless, but it's satisfying as hell.
Yeah. Oh no, it is. It's totally like, what other game can you do an atomic drop to like a gorilla and then have him like fly through a bridge and then throw an airplane at him?
You obviously haven't played any of the Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen games.
Actually, I have.
You wouldn't be asking that question.
No, I have played those games extensively, and I'm not even fucking kidding you, because I had a 11-year-old sister, well, around 11 when I was in my PlayStation gaming days, and she had all of those games and made me play them with her constantly, and they were horrible.
Were they?
Yes, I wish I still had them, and I would totally do a video review on them, but I don't have.
But how
them.
was the Irish whipping gorilla into a power field?
Wasn't as good as King of the Monsters.
Well, there you go. That's a glowing review right there. King of the Monsters does it better than Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen.
Yeah, and not many did.
No,
not many at all. But that's all I had, really. I've been kind of taking a break from the internet in general as of late, which I guess I can talk about later. But I will let you.
You said work has been getting you kind of down, so
yeah,
that's and it tends to be that people who comment on our content or any content on the internet, some of them have a really fucking bad attitude,
right?
And if they don't have anything positive to say, they should probably shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and I guess I will just kind of touch on it. It's not even so much our site. It's just I see it everywhere on a lot of other YouTube channels that I really enjoy, and I understand that we are not the best at what we do. I mean, nobody really is. And it's okay if you don't like something one of us says, if you don't agree with it, that's completely fine. And I like debating games. If you think the game I like sucks, let's talk about it, because that's fun, you know?
Yeah.
But there's so many people on the internet, they're just like, you're a fucking idiot. You idiot. You like this game more than Super Mario Brothers? Fuck you. Like, it's just stupid.
Well, and people comment before they even actually view the content, which really pisses me off.
That's the worst. That's like, you are the ultimate scum of the earth. Like, I see that a lot on our site, because people just, especially like on our top 10 lists they look at the results and they're like, oh,
well, I see it on Retrovolve, I see it on Geek Party, I see it all over N4G.
Right.
N4G is the worst for that.
Oh, that site is the worst. I fucking hate that entire community.
I do, and they're supremely negative. But it's people who don't bother to read anything other than headlines,
right,
and then just spew diarrhea from their mouth.
That's our culture, though. It's the fucking BuzzFeed generation that
we need to change this shit.
Yeah, and we can try, and unfortunately, it's really not going to make a difference, because people have decided the way that they want to view content is like 2 sentences and a list of fucking pictures, and they want to be able to scroll through something in 30 seconds and not take away anything from it, and just have this be this mindless, stupid experience, which is fine. That's like King of the Monsters, basically. That's okay.
Yeah.
But
be constructive about it.
But don't be a dickhead, and if you want that experience and go to a podcast that's an hour and a half long, don't listen to it, but comment and fucking attack us anyways, you're a piece of shit. I'm sorry. And, like, don't even come to our website. You know, I don't even care. It's just those kind of people piss me off. Those aren't the people I want reading our site. So they can all just fuck off.
I'd like them to read it. I would just like them to read it and then, like, fuck off.
Right.
Be constructive or keep it to yourself, because...
Right. Exactly. We're not...
But anyway, enough of this. I'm going to get mad, and it's going to go into a big tirade.
Right.
I'd rather not.
It's going to be top 10 list why we hate the internet.
Top 10 people who suck ass on the internet.
We need a lot more than 10. There's no way we can narrow it down.
Number 1, you.
Number 2. Also
that
you.
guy sitting next to you.
Yeah.
He's a dick, too. Yeah. I only did one thing on the site this week, and that was I found a news story talking about this guy who had put Super Smash Brothers on a TI-83 calculator, and he's currently refining it. He's only got Fox and Falco right now, but it looks the shit. I mean, like, it scales out and scales in. It looks legitimately good for a calculator conversion
Yeah.
to Smash Brothers. It looks better than anything Tiger ever put out on their handheld.
The Game Comet, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or the R Zone.
Or the R Zone, yeah.
No, I did read that article, and actually, it's super interesting, and it's kind of funny to me that people are still developing things, for those series of calculators, which I don't think are actually really that commonly used anymore.
I don't know. I haven't used one in school. I didn't use one in college at all.
I haven't been in a high school since I graduated.
I went through a lot of math in college, and we never... Well, that's not true. We did a little bit, but not big. Not like in high school.
Yeah, exactly.
But I downloaded the game and put it on mine because I still have one, and it actually plays really nice. It's got really intuitive controls, believe it or not, for a calculator.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just super cool. Like, just homebrew projects like that always intrigue me, especially if they're on like outdated, archaic hardware. It's just, I don't know, it's just super intriguing that somebody like that's that creative and that intelligent like puts the effort in to like do that.
I know it's a great little project, and I'm going to keep my eye on it and post more about it when it comes to fruition. More characters, more. There's like 4 stages right now, 2 characters, but they're working on it constantly and they want people to help them to add more characters and more stages. And I think when it's finally finished, there's enough power behind it. When it's finally finished, it's going to be a legitimately good version of Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah, definitely, and we'll keep an eye on it, and then if anything more significant happens regarding that project, we will certainly have something on Retrovolve to discuss it.
Other than us, Mandy and Josh put up a couple things. Josh put up one thing about the story of Red 13 and his father in Final Fantasy VII, and how it was like a haunting experience and really stuck with him over the years. I believe it was Mandy talked about how PlayStation Magazine was talking about how women are portrayed in games in the late 90s, which is pretty shocking.
Yeah.
At that time, there was already journalists saying, hey, wait a minute, this is kind of bullshit.
And it is a really interesting article. I actually did go and read that a few days ago. I think it is a really important topic to discuss, especially in current gaming, obviously, with all the, Gamergate shit. I don't even want to start discussing that because...
Yeah, round 2 is about
angry internet rants. That's number 3 in our top 10 people who suck on the internet.
Everyone at Gamergate.
Yes. and it's just really cool to see this article and see what they were saying about the issues, 17 years ago now?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
And also shocking to kind of see how little that the industry has evolved since then, given all the evolutions that have happened in pretty much every other aspect, regarding games and hardware and all that. That's still kind of, there's been baby steps, but still, I think the overwhelming attitude towards women in gaming is still very much the way it was 2 decades ago, which I think sucks and needs to change, but...
Yeah, this article in PlayStation Magazine was written when even an old fart like me wasn't even an adult yet, so...
Right.
It's... we think of looking at sexism in games as a modern phenomenon, but it's not.
No.
It hasn't changed enough at all.
Yeah. I completely agree. Other than that...
There's just a couple other things up on the site this week from Josh and Mandy. The content that is up this week is phenomenal, much as we normally would, just because the holidays are coming up, things are getting kind of,
right.
Back and forth. I just started a new job, and your work has been really...
the worst.
Really pissing you off.
I want to Falcon punch my boss.
Falcon punch!
And I might do that. No, not really. I do not advocate workplace violence.
I don't know if I had my Monster World 4 thing up when we talked.
I think we did discuss that last week.
Did we?
Yeah, and that's actually another thing you can find on Retrovolve is prior episodes of the Tim and Andy Show, as well as a few other podcast-related items by going to Retrovolve and clicking the Browse button, and you'll see a video and podcast link right under there.
You can also find us on iTunes.
That's right. I don't know if we even discussed that much last week. We are now on iTunes. So just There is a link. If you follow the path that I just laid out there, you can find a link to that on Retrovolve, or just go to the iTunes store and type in the Tim and Andy Show, and you will find it there. This episode and the last 3 episodes as well.
You can
all
also type
there.
in retro gaming and we'll show up.
That's true, that's pretty cool.
It is really cool.
So, easy to find. Last week's episode was a lot of fun. We had our own alcoholic Luigi join for that, and he added some, I won't say intelligent insight, but insight nonetheless. Entertaining insight.
You're going to get a suplex for that one, man.
I hope so. It would be an honor to receive a suplex from Luigi.
Someday in the future, we're going to get together with him, and we're going to play some 32-bit era wrestling games.
Yes.
He's a professional wrestler.
He is. Yeah, we talked about that last week, and you can find the video of him knocking out a guy with the power glove, and that's actually how he wins the match. He punches a guy in the face with the power glove and pins him with a 3 count. It's pretty awesome. I enjoyed it. I think next time he has a match, I think he said he has one this coming up weekend, which I won't be able to make, but the one after that, I think we're going to have to go and do like a live Tim and Andy Show report.
I think so, because, I mean, his wrestling name is Ty Cooper, Mr. Entertainment, versus Banyo on YouTube is just amazing.
Yeah. And actually, I forgot to ask him about his ring name. I wonder, is it like a take on Sly Cooper, do you think?
I have no clue. I didn't ask him.
Yeah, I just thought of that the other day as I was kind of.
I know his legal real name is Alcoholic Luigi, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, duh. But yeah, so that was a lot of fun. Go check that out.
What are we talking about this week?
Well, this week we are actually discussing, I don't know what would be a good way to put it, the top 10. I guess it's kind of hard to label. You labeled it as game changers, which I think was a really good one to go with. Kind of the games that set a new standard for either their genre or their platform or a certain feature that became commonplace in games after that. It's not necessarily a list of top 10 games that did this thing first. It's top 10 games that innovated a feature or a genre that really helped define it and really helped evolve it into kind of what it is today, I guess. We'll kind of be mixing a lot of talk with modern games in with this one, I think, as we look at how these games influenced some of the games that are out today, which I think will be fun.
Yeah.
So,
what was your first one on that list?
Well, shit. You caught me off guard. I wasn't prepared for this. You know what? I actually think I have to go take my laundry out here, so we will leave that as a tease, and we will come back right after the break with me and Tim's countdown of the top 10 most groundbreaking, game-changing games. I could have worded that better with less redundancy.
Game changers.
There you go. Top 10 game changers. After the break here on the Tim and Andy Show on Retrovolve.com.
So in there, are you going to put in like some video game music?
Yeah, I'll put in something. I don't know. Fuck 'em.
What's on your list? Like really kick-ass music-wise? I've got a fuck ton on my list.
I guess I have Doom, which has some fucking amazing music. Other than that, they're not games that are really... I have Donkey Kong, SimCity, Black Hole, and Gran Turismo, which aren't really like music games.
That level 1 music from Doom is fucking amazing.
Oh,
God.
no, wait, that's Master of Puppets. Welcome back to the 4th episode of the Tim and Andy Show on RetroVolve.com, where we are going to count down our top 10 game changers in the game industry. And I'm actually looking while we were time to press the rewind button there. While we were on break, I was browsing the internet and I saw a video that was posted on Facebook for at the Arcade Expo in Banning, California in January, where they are looking to set the world record for most people simultaneously playing pinball at one time. And I really kind of want to go to this, but it is 2 months away, so I don't know if I can make it work. But if anybody in the area here in Minnesota or anybody anywhere that's listening is going to this, let me know. Email me at retrovolve@gmail.com, and I'll see if maybe I can make it out there, because that sounds awesome. Not only that expo in general, but to be a part of that record, I think would be really cool. Let's see if I can find it was posted on the Pinball Arcade, the video pinball compilation, their Facebook account, but it's the Arcade Expo in Banning, California. So go look it up if you're interested. I think that's really cool. And I guess that leads right into my first pick, and maybe if I do attend the Arcade Expo, I can play this game while setting that record, and that is Black Hole, which was developed by Gottlieb in 1981. And I know this is kind of going a little bit off the beaten path, as it's technically not a video game, but to me...
Hey, there's an LCD display on there.
There is, and I'm strictly talking about the LCD displays that count your score.
And as you said before we started the show, you could play this game in a lot of video compilations.
Right.
Because it's so
to
famous.
And just pinball goes hand in hand with retro video games to me, especially in arcades. They were right next to each other. You played pinball right after you played Pac-Man or whatever. To me, it's part of it, even though it's technically not a video game. It's kind of the same sort of thing. It's a video game in the physical realm. So to me, these are like the precursors to video games anyways. So
definitely,
I think this is like the retroist of retro games, which is why I'm putting it in here. And if you haven't played Black Hole Pinball before, I would recommend anybody listening pull up like an image of it or the Wikipedia page or anything, just to kind of follow along with me, and kind of you can see what I'm talking about.
I think first everyone knows kind of what it is.
Yeah, I would assume that a lot of our potential audience probably is at least a little familiar with it. But to give a kind of a quick overview, like I said, it was a pinball machine released in 1981 by Gottlieb, who to me is my favorite pinball manufacturer. They just put out most of my favorite games. Other companies made equally good ones.
What else did they do that you know of?
A lot of my favorites for them are their earlier electromechanical machines that weren't solid state electronics, like some of the original ones. I think I'm totally blanking on it. There's that pool one. It's not Trick Shot, I don't think. I'm totally blanking on it at the moment. But
That's okay. I put you on the spot there.
You kind of
Sorry about that.
Yeah, dickhead. You're making me look like an idiot here.
No.
Which is probably accurate, so whatever. They actually, I think I have an article on Retrovolve somewhere about, I'm going to look this up here now that we're on the topic. I did a review on, this was a couple of years ago when I first launched the site, but I think it is on the current site, about a Gottlieb video pinball collection for the Nintendo GameCube, and I think it's also on the PS2 and Xbox. It was one of those that was kind of for everything. Yeah, I do have it here.
Well, people should check that out.
Yeah, Ace High. No, that's the card game one.
Ace High, yeah.
Yeah, and it does have Black Hole on here as well, which I was kind of going to mention it anyways. It is also on the Pinball Arcade, which I did mention a few minutes ago. But anyways,
that's on the GameCube?
Yeah, it's on the GameCube and PS2. I think it's PS2, Xbox. I think there's also a version for the Wii that's largely the same thing. I would recommend getting it on PS2 just because the triggers on the GameCube, like, you have to push them in so far before they actually respond, which for pinball is kind of a big problem because you need, like, lightning quick response to your input.
PS3 is kind of like that too, but PS2 is excellent because it's just are really quick. There's not much action on that button.
Right, and like for the PS3 and stuff, like the pinball games I have for that, I always map the flippers to the bumper buttons instead of the triggers.
Yeah.
Just because, I just playing it with like a trigger just feels weird because there's no analog triggers on a pinball machine. Why would there be? It's stupid.
Yep.
Anyways, Black Hole. It was
Black Hole Pinball. I've never played it personally, but I really want to.
You should, and even if it's just a video version, like I said, this game is on 1.5 billion video pinball collections that have been released throughout the years. Why this one I think is really important and really needs to be a part of this list is because it was the first pinball machine to demand a 50-cent price point, which is a big deal at the time. Doesn't seem like that's a bargain these days.
It's twice as much as the rest of them cost, though.
Right, but it was also, when it was released, was the highest grossing pinball machine of all time, which, you can say that has to do with, double the price, but it still does reflect that people did play it because they saw this and they're like, yeah, that absolutely, I will pay double the money for that because it looks that amazing. And it was that amazing.
It's really attractive just to watch someone play it because it looks so clean and so well made. And of course, as you were, I'm sure, about to say, the 2 levels.
Yes, it has the inverted. Yeah, not only does it have 2 different play fields, the one in the center of the table that's kind of below the main surface is inverted, so the flippers are at the top of the table instead of on the bottom like they usually are, and the ball flows towards the back of the table on the lower level. It goes with the theme of this sci-fi black hole, like
it's so unique,
really messing with the senses, and I just think it works so well, and it's something that was done in a lot of pinballs after, but Black Hole was I'm not going to say it was the first one to do a second table, but it was the first one to do it effectively and make it a fun part of the game and not just a gimmick.
Well, now I had a question about that. In the physical machine on the bottom level, is that a gravity effect and a mirror, or is it?
No, it actually is like. The table actually is sloped that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so, but there is like a pane of glass over the top of it, so it's not like the ball just falls into it.
Right.
Yeah, you have to shoot it into a certain portal, and then it shoots it below, and then the rest of the table kind of gets blacked out, and the middle lights up, and it just looks so freaking cool. And like you said, you can just watch somebody play this game, and it's just super cool to see how intricate this machine is in terms of its lighting and its sound effects, and I just really enjoy that about pinball in general. I think it has that added element of a physical, tangible thing, whereas video games it's just all within a screen. But this is actual mechanical parts and actual LED lights, and I just think it's super cool and real world physics because it's happening in real fucking world.
Right. I mean that's amazing, and the fact that they really popularized that is definitely gives it a deserving spot on this list, especially for being physical. I mean, like, that takes a lot of planning.
Yeah. That's really what amazes me about pinball, that medium in general, is just how much effort goes into making one of these machines and how much planning and engineering goes into designing a pinball table. It blows me away. And
then having to make it look good.
Yeah,
too.
and then the beautiful artwork on top of that. It's just, like, pinball is a work of art to me. It really is. Like, a really good pinball machine is absolutely a work of art, and I will argue that with anybody. It's just... It makes
any bar that it's in sound cooler and look cooler.
Yeah, and just, whenever I walk into somewhere and I hear, pop bumpers going off and whatever, it just makes me smile because I just love pinball. And I actually, a few years ago, I lived in another area of the state, and literally a block away from me, there was this bar. It's called Blainebrook. If anybody in the Minnesota area, if you live near Blaine, Minnesota, go to Blainebrook. And I actually didn't realize it the first time I went there. The second time I went there, I went to find the bathroom, and I saw there's this room next to it that was separated from the bar, and I looked in there, and it's just this huge room full of vintage pinball machines all working, and like my jaw dropped, and I'm like, holy fucking shit. And like I don't think they don't have a Black Hole, but they had they had like Addams Family, they had
that was a great one.
Yeah, that's another one that could have made this list.
My big one that I played was Elvis pinball.
Yes.
I'm not a big Elvis fan. I mean, like, he's okay, but like
Right.
the bar in Minneapolis near where I used to live, the bar is called the Kitty Cat Club, and I haven't been there in a long time, so I don't know if they still have the same pinball machine, but they had an Elvis pinball machine back by their pool table, by the deck in the back of the bar.
Yeah. I don't think I played that one, but
I threw so much money in there.
yeah, it's just pinball can just suck away so much of your money.
Well, and the machine had a table right next to it, so I could put my drink down and just listen to the live music that was playing and just play Elvis pinball. And I can't believe how much money I spent on that machine.
Right.
But I loved it.
And actually, this was a couple of years ago now. Me and Josh, who also runs Retrovolve. This is before then. We went to this place, the Blainebrook, one night, and there's actually a picture of me. I should try to find this somewhere. And I'm playing NBA Hang Time pinball, and just the look on my face is just like I'm just so happy right now. And like
Pure
I look
joy.
at that, it's just I'm in my element. You've got a beer sitting next to me, and I'm sitting playing a pinball machine, and like nothing could be better than that. Like it's just I love pinball. It's not something I did much of as a kid, but being as active in the retro gaming scene as I am now, I've really grown a super large appreciation for the medium. And
when I was a little kid, there was a grocery store near my home that we always shopped at called Country Club in Roseville. And being a little kid, I must have been like 5 or 6. I didn't want to go grocery shopping with my parents. So they would just give me a handful of quarters, and I would sit in the entryway to the store between the front doors and the actual inner door going to the store, and I would play Pinbot. And I constantly played that thing. I was so entranced by it. It was just pure joy. And I don't think people have quite the same connection to pinball today as they did even in the late 80s, early 90s at that time. But yeah, it was something special.
yeah,
It can't be reproduced entirely correctly on video format.
No, and a lot of them do it well, and I play a lot of video pinball, but, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's not the same. I mean, you obviously have the advantage of you don't actually have to freaking spend quarters every time you want to play. Like,
Unless it's yours.
well, yeah, and eventually I totally plan on at some point in life getting at least 2 or 3 pinball machines just to have and play. They're a lot of maintenance, but...
You ever been to Summit Amusement on University Avenue?
I don't think so.
Summit Amusement, University Avenue, about halfway between, well, it's kind of near Midway, I guess, kind of near where I live. And they sell old arcade machines that they've refurbished. Some that don't work, some that do. They have a shit ton of pinball machines and our old arcade machines. I was actually, wasn't that long ago that I was there. All the month of December, by the way, you can go in there whenever you want to and look at their machines. Normally, the hours are limited, but all during December, they're trying to push sales for Christmas. And I remember I went in there, and I remember this when you and I went to the pub last week to do the show, and they had the non-functioning Donkey Kong machine. The first time I ever saw that machine, actually, was at Summit Amusement. They were selling it for $3,000.
$3,000 for Donkey Kong?
Oh, here's the kicker, though. It was never used. It was never used.
Well,
it's brand new.
Well, in that case, fucking bargain. If I had $3,000, I would...
I know, right? Like, I want that fucking thing so bad.
That is actually like my actually no, we're gonna table talk on Donkey Kong.
Okay.
Because it is one of my later picks. So we'll end talk on that.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. What was the name of that store again?
Summit Amusement.
Summit. All right. I'll be sending them a bill later this week for that free that advertisement.
Oh, and a lot of the places in the Twin Cities that have arcade machines, if you look at the arcade machine, it'll have a Summit Amusement sticker on it because they also lease out machines.
Yeah.
To businesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they do both.
There's not a whole lot of people doing that anymore. There actually was.
If you want like a machine that doesn't work though, like if you're looking for parts, if that's your bag, like they've got lots of stuff in there.
Yeah,
it's a really cool place just to walk around and like if I had the money, I would buy a skee-ball machine for the house for sure.
Oh shit! I actually talking about this breaks my heart because about a month ago I had the opportunity to purchase a fully working NBA Jam arcade machine for $50. And I couldn't do it because it wouldn't fit in my apartment door. And it broke.
That's such a tragedy.
And that is like my childhood dream, to have an NBA Jam. Like, I loved NBA Jam. This is the greatest thing ever when you're 8 years old. And like, that's been my dream, to have this. And I had a friend that was selling it because he was moving to Seattle. And he's like, give me $50, you haul it out of here and it's yours. And I took the measurements and it just wouldn't have fit. And it breaks my heart to this day. God damn it.
Next time that happens, let me know. You can keep it in my house till you have a space to put it in.
You see, I didn't know you then, though.
I know.
This is all your fucking fault.
Jesus. Well, I'm going to talk about my first pick then. I think, excuse me, drinking copious amounts of beer here.
Bullshit brew?
You know it. My first choice is going to be a game that doesn't need much introduction or discussion, but Super Mario 64. And the reason why I think this needs to go on there, I didn't have this when it first came out. My friends had this. I didn't have an N64 until a bit later in its lifetime. But regardless of my experiences with it, Super Mario 64 really set the standard for all three-dimensional platformers up to and including today. It wasn't the first 3D platformer. I'm not sure what that was, but it probably wasn't very good, and it definitely was no Super Mario 64. If I remember correctly, this game was packed with the N64 when it first came out, which would have made it the last Mario pack-in with a system. Oh, no, maybe not. No, it was, because the Virtual Boy came out before the N64, and that had Mario Tennis, and that doesn't count anyway because it's tennis. But, yeah, Mario 64 had just the tight controls, the good camera, or, well, for the time good, the way the camera should work, good music, good environment. It was still familiar enough to old Mario fans where it felt right, and it had a lot of stuff to collect, so it kept you busy for a very, very long time. And I don't think to this day I've ever gotten every star in the game, even though I spent a lot of time with it.
To put this game, how impressive it is in context, this game came out 2 months before Bubsy 3D for the PlayStation. 2 months before, not after. This game came out before Bubsy 3D, and if you are unfamiliar with Bubsy 3D, go type that shit into YouTube right now, and yeah,
it's terrible. It's an abomination.
Right. But no, you're absolutely right, and I actually, on my cartridge, I do have a save file with 120 stars. But
really?
That's not because I did it. I bought it used, and it was already on there. Yeah, this isn't one I had as a kid either, but it's one I played as a kid because knowing, friends with 64, eventually I did get to play it. And I still remember that first time you boot up the game and start a new file, and it just opens up in front of the castle, and you spend at least like 20 minutes just wandering around. Like, you're not looking for anything. It's just like, holy shit, I can wander around in this 3D environment. Nothing's telling me not to. There's a tree, I can climb up it.
I can get to the top of that tree and I can just hump it.
Yeah, exactly. I can't tell you how many times when I played 2D platformers, like, I wish I could fucking hump that tree.
I know.
And this game let you do it.
Yep. And there was no time limit there. That was the hub world. You could do whatever you wanted.
Exactly. And there's a moat in front of the castle. You can jump in there and swim around all day if you want to. And
there's so many things that this game does right. It could have its own podcast about it.
Yeah, and it's to be honest, it's not a game I have a whole lot of sentiment tied to. I've never really played this game at length. I think I've probably gotten to like 30 or 40 stars. Every few years I'll try to play it and beat it, and I just get distracted like I do with everything. But it does deserve to be on this list just because it started the 3D generation, plain and simple. Like,
yeah,
it set the bar, and it stayed the pinnacle for a long time. Like, there were few games that were as good as this game was in that generation period.
I have a lot of fondness for it just because, as I said, I didn't have a 64 when they came out, but my close friends did, and we would have sleepovers every Friday. And I just have a very comfortable, nostalgic feeling of, like, waking up in the morning on a Saturday in the winter, going downstairs to their basement with a bowl of cereal and, like, watching their little brother play Mario 64 and, like, talking about it and stuff. It was just such a happy time in my life, and a lot of it had to do with that era. And Mario 64, for me, really kind of encompasses that era.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel about retro games too. It's not always the games themselves or the levels or the enemies or anything in the game. It's the memories that are tied to the game. That time spent with childhood friends. Sitting and talking and playing this game. And I don't know. Everything you say there is valid. It's sometimes it's more than the game. It's everything that came with the game.
Yep.
So. Yeah, I like I said, I don't really have a whole lot of emotional ties to the game, but looking at it objectively as a game and looking at its importance to the industry, especially at that time, it's one of the most influential games, period. Whether you like it or not, have any attachment to it at all, you've got to admit, Super Mario 64 is up there on top 10 games that really changed the industry for good. And like you said, there are so many games to this day that draw inspiration from it. I don't think you can deny that.
Nope.
So, yeah, it's a great game, but yeah, not one I played a lot of, but definitely I think going to rank fairly high on this list.
On that note, what was your next pick, sir?
My next pick, I guess we'll kind of go with what I teased during my last pick, and that is Donkey Kong for the arcades. And anybody that has been following Retrovolve for any amount of time knows that I love Donkey Kong dearly. My first ever article on Retrovolve when I booted it 2 years ago, just kind of crazy to imagine, 2 years ago, was about how I thought Donkey Kong was the best game ever made, period. And, well, maybe I've kind of backed off from that stance a little bit. I think it certainly might be the most important game of all time, being that it like Mario was the first 3D platformer. This was like the first platformer, period, in a way.
Would it be fair to say this is your favorite game of all time?
It's up there. From this era, yes.
Arcade games?
Arcade games, no doubt. No, it's not even close. This is, like I said, this is my ultimate dream, to own a working Donkey Kong machine, just to have and play. And it's just just so much about it. Like, it, aside from the platforming elements, it had, as brief and kind of abstract as it is, it has a storyline. No games had that at the time, given you're just a guy who's had his girlfriend captured by a monkey and you have to save her.
It works, though.
Yeah, it's a story, and not, how many, what's the story behind asteroids? Why are you shooting asteroids? Like, what are these
Nobody
asteroids?
knows.
Yeah, exactly. And it had it had a definitive beginning and a definitive ending. When you get to the end of the rivets level and Donkey Kong falls and Mario and Jumpman and Daisy or whatever kiss, and then it starts over again.
I thought it was Paulina.
Pauline, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Or Pauline?
Yeah, not Daisy, Pauline. Yeah, for being as big of a Donkey Kong fan as I am, I should know that.
Well, it's okay, because Daisy's kind of in that same boat.
Yeah, and I focus more on just playing the game and not, so.
But it was the first game to incorporate any modicum of story sequence.
Yeah, and, I mean, just the element of platforming that, here's an obstacle, jump over it. Like, you didn't get that before. You just had to avoid things. Like, you look at Pac-Man. I'm not dissing Pac-Man. I love Pac-Man, but...
Pac-Man's awesome.
Yeah, but you just had to avoid enemies. You couldn't jump over them, and... you got. I guess the hammer is kind of like the power pellet of the game, where that is your sort of defense. But it was just so innovative with its 4 different levels. Like I said, it's kind of storied structure is like I said, it's very, very brief, very loose story, but it does have a story, which I think is really cool. And it's just one of those games that you can pick up and you can play it and you know what's going on, but you could spend your whole life playing this game and not master it. Few people have, but they're very few and far between.
Well, I mean, like you said, it's one of those games that's so simple that anyone can play it, but at the same time, you're not going to master it.
Yeah.
But it's enjoyable to the point where you're going to want to keep playing and try to master it.
Exactly, and there was a lot of arcade games back then that were They were simple to understand, but they got so brutally difficult so quickly that you're just like, I don't want to play this. Why would I spend my money if I'm just going to die right away? And this kind of gave you enough of a leeway to where you're like, you feel like you're actually getting better at it. Then you hit a wall and then you're just getting your ass kicked, but you feel like you're getting better and you keep wanting to play more. I think it just had that perfect balance of accessibility and difficulty and the risk versus reward of classic arcade games. I really think it hit that balance better than anything else did at the time.
There's a book called Power Up: How Japanese Video Games Gave the World an Extra Life by Chris Kohler, and he discusses in the beginning Donkey Kong and how the fact that it had a definitive beginning, middle, and end story structure was the absolute first example in any game that to feature that level of story, a coherent story. Even as minor as it is, it still followed the basic rules of storytelling, and I think that is extremely important because at the time, video games, like you said, they didn't have a story.
Yeah,
that wasn't even part of it. You want a story? Read a book. This is a video game. This is a toy.
Yeah. Like what's Pac-Man's deal? Why is he eating white dots? And
right.
Ghosts are chasing him. Like, great game, but what's the
right.
reasoning behind it?
Exactly. So yeah, Donkey Kong cannot the importance of Donkey Kong in the industry cannot be understated at all.
Yeah, and I mean beyond that, even just the game is just so much fun, and
it cannot be overstated. I should say.
Yeah.
Understated. It can totally be understated.
Right. But yeah, like I said, the game's just so much fun, and it's not like I keep going back to Pac-Man, and it's gonna sound like I'm shitting on Pac-Man, but I do like Pac-Man. I love Pac-Man.
Ms. Pac-Man's better though.
Right. Exactly. But in just terms of comparing it, like you could memorize the patterns of the ghosts in Pac-Man, and you can technically like master that game and get a perfect score, which of course Billy Mitchell has done. I think other people have done. But in Donkey Kong, it has enough randomization in terms of like how the barrels zigzag down the screen, and
yeah, are they going to go down that particular ladder?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah, exactly, and there are ways like really advanced players kind of know how to manipulate them in a ways, but you get the zigzag pattern barrels that don't actually follow the ramps on the first level, that they're completely random and there's nothing you can do to predict them. And
even if you did have the mechanics of the game down to a science, like. You think about that. Like, you have to get to that level in order to master a game like this. It has lasting challenge and appeal to it.
Yeah, such a lasting challenge and appeal that last decade they made a feature film about people trying to conquer this game and better each other at this game. Like, that to me, like, is like exhibit A on why this game is so timeless and so classic, is they made a major film, a documentary about people trying to beat each other at this game that at that point was 25 years old.
Yeah, it's older than I am.
And it's continuing to this day. They still have big, huge competitions. I think it's called like the Kong Off or something. And they receive a lot of attention in the gaming news outlets. It's still a big thing to be the Donkey Kong world record holder. I mean, can you even name any other arcade game or any other arcade game period that has such a devoted following and demands such attention to the people that have really showed that they are skilled at it to this day? You can't.
No.
And I don't know. It's timeless. It did so much for the industry, not only in arcades. I guess I'm using the arcade version for this list, but I mean even on the home consoles. It sold tons of ColecoVisions.
Oh, it sold consoles.
Yeah, and
even the Atari version is extremely fun.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that one gets shit on a lot, but I love it, the Atari 2600 version.
It's classic.
Yeah, and I mean, even the NES, they released a version for the NES, which sold a bazillion copies, and the NES could do so much more, graphics-wise than the original arcade version could do, but they just put basically a port minus a level. It had less than the arcade game did, and it still sold a bazillion copies, and it's still great. I actually have a review of it on our YouTube channel, so go check that out.
Nice plug.
There you go. Tied it all together. I don't know, that's my case for Donkey Kong. Unless you have anything to add, then I will let you go on to your next pick.
My next pick is going to be Phantasy Star 2 for the Sega Mega Drive / Genesis. And I don't have a whole lot to say about it other than the fact that I'm a huge role-playing game fan, especially Japanese role-playing games. And I grew up with them, and I remember being completely obsessed with Final Fantasy I on the NES and Dragon Warrior on the NES. And then a friend of mine, a casual friend of mine, I was just hanging out at his house for the first time ever. His older brother had a Genesis, which was like the big daddy, the cool kid thing to have at the time. The SNES wasn't out yet, and they had Phantasy Star 2, and I remember watching his brother play it, and it really blew me away that they could have the same gameplay from the games that I liked, like Final Fantasy and Dragon Warrior, but it didn't have to be like swords and sorcery. It could be like laser guns and robots. And that dichotomy, that change, I think is really, really important. I'm sure there was games before that. Obviously, Phantasy Star 1 also had a lot of sci-fi elements into it. But Phantasy Star 2, like the music and the setting and the characters, I really bought it. And it was a very unique experience to me. So for me, Phantasy Star 2 proves that role-playing games don't have to be medieval.
Yeah, and I haven't played much of this game. I have played a little bit of it. I do have it on the Xbox Live Arcade because I think I listened to some retro gaming podcast a while back, and they talked very highly of it. And I unfortunately just haven't had much time to spend with it. But yeah, I think you nailed it with the whole concept of having a role-playing game, but it being more than medieval and swords and wizards, and not that there's anything wrong with that. But
and there are swords in the game, and there is magic in the game,
right?
But there's also laser rifles and robots.
Exactly, it's a more futuristic take on it, which I think at the time was incredibly innovative. It had kind of been explored, I think, with some text adventures on the PC.
I'm sure it had been done before.
But really not to this level on a console RPG. And this is one I always see talked about amongst really diehard RPG fans. Admittedly, that's not me. I have played very few of these games, but kind of going off topic a little bit here for a second, I did order a copy of Dragon Warrior for the NES, which you borrowed me.
Nice.
So I'm going to play.
A copy of that?
No, you borrowed me the NES, but I bought a copy of Dragon Warrior off of eBay to play on it.
No, that NES is yours, bro.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, that wasn't a borrow. That wasn't me lending it to you. I gave that to you.
Oh, well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
This generous motherfucker here.
Yeah.
And I also did buy Kickle Cubicle, which I was going to mention at the start of the show, which is a callback to our first ever episode of. It wasn't even the Tim and Andy show. It was
Sunday Sermons.
Yeah.
The last episode of Sunday Sermons.
I think it was like the third episode and also the last. but we evolved. We improved. Just like Phantasy Star 2 evolved and improved the RPG genre, especially on the console.
Well, Phantasy Star 2 also, another thing that was kind of cool to note about it is that it was the biggest Genesis cartridge at the time. I think it might have been the first 16 meg Genesis cartridge. It was massive. How much data?
Oh yeah, this is. For some reason, I was thinking this was Master System, but that was the first Phantasy Star.
Yeah, that was Phantasy Star 1, which is still a good game. I didn't play it at the time. I didn't play it until years later when I got the Phantasy Star collection on my GBA, and then I was like, wow, this is kind of a bag of dicks. And then then I went and played the ROM of the original, and the original Sega Master System version is pretty good. But Phantasy Star 2, I don't know what we're doing for music for the rest of this episode, but the town theme, the first town theme in Phantasy Star 2, when you start playing it, is so jazzy and has, it's got such a good flow to it, and music for me is gigantic in games. And that music to me is just absolute pure nostalgia. It still sounds really good, and it sounded amazing at the time.
Yeah, I mean it's on the Genesis, so I mean,
how can you go wrong?
Yeah, we've discussed my complete love for Genesis music in general on this show before. I think it was on our Wolf episode in particular.
And last episode we talked about it too, I think.
Yeah, I think we did.
I think when we were talking to Alcoholic Luigi.
Is it this song? Can you hear that?
I can't hear anything right now.
Oh.
But I trust that you can type that into a search engine. You know?
I'm playing that on YouTube, and I just stuck one of my earbuds up to the microphone thinking that would work. I have a degree in audio engineering, by the way.
Yes, you do.
So that was my solution to that. Fucking.
But yeah, it's an amazing tune. It's really good.
Yeah, I will look that up, and I will perhaps stick it in the break between our between the end of this discussion and the results of our countdown.
Well, that's all I had to say about that game. If you want to go in with your next pick.
Yeah, I just kind of, I don't know. I didn't really have a whole lot more to say about this either. It's one that's on my. I think I say this every list, or every show. Like, this is on my list of things I have to play. Like, my list is like 400 things long, but this is one I have gone out and bought with the intention of playing, and maybe one day I'll get around to it, maybe not. But I don't know. It looks really awesome. Yeah, well, I don't own the cartridge. I just have it on Xbox Live Arcade, and I actually think I do own it. It's on that Ultimate Genesis collection for the Xbox 360.
It is.
Okay, which I owned before that, so I've bought it twice.
I believe that Phantasy Star 3 is on that too. I know 4 is not.
Yeah, and I think the original is too. There's some Master System games that you can unlock, and I think I could play through the whole fucking series basically if I wanted to.
Sitting right here at my computer, I am looking dead in the face at my boxed copies of Phantasy Star 2, 3, and 4 on the Genesis, because I am such a huge fan. And it all started with 2, for me.
Yeah. I'll get around to it eventually. Unfortunately, I didn't really have time to play it before the show, but I mean, I've heard so much about it, and I think I really have a pretty decent understanding about kind of what the game is about. And it takes place in the Andromeda Galaxy, doesn't it?
It takes place in the Algo system.
Okay.
But the fourth game in the series, this is kind of fun trivia to mention, was the biggest Genesis game, and when it came out, it was $100 for the game.
Jesus Christ!
Why it didn't sell very good, because it was so expensive.
Well, yeah, especially $100 back then, which is like $150 now.
I mean, this is a game that's longer than Final Fantasy VII on a 16-bit console, with amazing graphics and music. The only reason I didn't mention it is because it just took everything that 2 did and made it better. But 2 was the first one, in my opinion, to do it right.
All right, cool. Well, that is Phantasy Star 2 for the Genesis / Mega Drive, I guess depending on where you're listening. I will go back to my list here, and I think next I'm going to let's go with Gran Turismo for the Sony PlayStation for my next pick.
Hell yeah.
This is actually a topic I haven't discussed much over the course of the show, or even on Retrovolve period. I haven't done much regarding the genre, but I love driving simulation games. I'm not even a car person. I know my car has 4 wheels and an engine, and I turn the key and it goes. That's all I know about my car. Don't know anything about cars, don't even have a huge interest in cars. But I love auto racing and not really so much like NASCAR, but I really like Formula 1 and that kind of thing. But so I really enjoy any type of racing game, but specifically really authentic driving simulation games. And Gran Turismo was the first to really be a simulation. There are games that had come out before that had simulation aspects, and I mean, looking back now, with what we have now, it's definitely a lot less simulator-esque than the new Gran Turismo games that are out now, or even the Forza games.
However, though, Gran Turismo as a series still continues to be the front runner. It's the gold standard of driving sims.
I would agree with that to a certain extent. But
well, it's what people think of.
Right. I mean, it's still a great series. I bought a PS3 last year just to play Gran Turismo 6. I'd never been compelled to buy one before, but I bought one for Gran Turismo 6 and then bought Gran Turismo 5 the same day.
I really liked 5. I didn't play 6, but I played the first one a lot back in the day.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think everybody did it. This is one of those, Hallmark, Mount Rushmore PlayStation games, I think, and it's just how. I mean, this game was so beautiful on the PlayStation.
Oh, yeah.
There was really nothing that came before this that looked as gorgeous as Gran Turismo did, and had all. Not only did it look great, it had tons of content. I think it had, upwards of almost 200 cars, which, I mean, at the time it was insane. The first game I bought for the Sony PlayStation, which I actually have a video review on Retrovolve as well, is Test Drive 4. And that game had like 8 or 9 cars. And then like a year or two later, Gran Turismo comes out and it has 100-something, so many cars, more cars than you could ever, possibly know what to do with.
I think the only game on the PlayStation that looks as good as Gran Turismo is Gran Turismo 2.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I was almost considering putting 2 on instead, but I mean, it's not that much better of a game to where it could be considered more of a game changer, I guess.
Well, it goes back to what I said about Phantasy Star 2 and 4. Like, Gran Turismo 2 did everything that Gran Turismo did. It just did it better. It refined it. But
right.
Gran Turismo was the one that started it all.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, there just had never been a driving simulation, on this scale, or even close to this scale prior to this. And this is much with what you had mentioned with Super Mario 64. Just the memories I have playing this game. Actually, I still have the video somewhere of this. My cousin pranked me when I think I was like in 4th or 5th grade at the time. And he knew I wanted this game more than anything because I'd played it at a friend's and just was obsessed with it. And my cousin at the time, my cousin Kevin, was my best friend. So he came over for my birthday and he gave me my present and it was all wrapped up. And I was like, this is Gran Turismo 2 because it was like Gran Turismo, not Gran Turismo 2, but it was in like the 2-disc. It came in like the 2-disc
I was going to
case.
say, is your cousin a time traveler?
Yeah, right.
You brought me this
But
sequel.
it actually... It actually wasn't 2 discs. The reason they had it in the 2-disc case because the manual was so thick, it needed like a separate case for it, which to me is awesome. Like I love that. But the game actually is just 1 disc.
Yep, but it needs the space for that thick manual.
Right, but he did enough research and knew enough about it to where he found 2 of his parents' old Brooks and Dunn CDs. And tied them together and wrapped them up. And I was thinking I had Gran Turismo, and I opened it up, and it's fucking like Brooks and Dunn Greatest Hits 1 and 2. And like I was just like, I had to like feign enthusiasm because my whole family was there, and I didn't want to be a dick. I'm like, oh, great. And like they just let me sit there for like 5 minutes, like trying to comprehend this. And then eventually he's like, oh, it must have been a mistake. And then he gave me Gran Turismo.
Oh,
and
I was going to say, at least he did it. Because if he didn't actually produce the goods, you'd need to, like, knife him. Because that's horrible.
Well, but one of the all-time greatest pranks.
That's a good prank, as long as you follow it up with the actual game.
No, yeah, and he actually did follow that up. And that whole night, we stayed up. We didn't sleep that night. We played Gran Turismo till the sun came up. And it is one of my...
that night. Of course you didn't sleep that night.
Yeah, why would you? There's Gran Turismo to play. Yeah. And like I don't even think we like unlocked any of the other tracks. We literally just drove around High Speed Ring like 50 million times because it was just so much fun. I only needed the 1 track. There were, how many others, but I was, I could just drive around that 1 track forever. And, and it was just so cool because it had like a career mode where you're allotted a certain amount of money. You bought like, some run-of-the-mill Toyota or Nissan, and then as you raced and, won races, you could earn more money and upgrade it and buy new cars, and that had never been done before.
That was amazing.
It was just like, oh, pick your track and pick your car, have at it. But this was like an immersive career mode where you start with a car, you race it, you upgrade it, you trade it in, you get a better car, you upgrade that, and it felt like you were actually accomplishing something instead of just being like a one-off race and, then you're done with it.
Right.
And I don't know, I just love that.
When I hadn't been dating my girlfriend for very long at the time, but one of the ways me and her little brother bonded was I was staying over at her parents' house for like Christmas Eve or something. and her brother had gotten the latest Gran Turismo, and we stayed up pretty late playing it, and like, this like 15, 14-year-old kid and me were like bonding over over Gran Turismo. So it really does like bring people closer together.
That's right. Gran Turismo brings people together.
It sure does.
And I don't know. It's just like I said. Well, let me start over here. I mean, I'm getting so excited talking about Gran Turismo. I can't even formulate a sentence.
You should take a break. You'll play some Gran Turismo.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. The rest of the podcast is going to be me playing Gran Turismo for 4 hours.
Yeah.
But like I said, it actually felt like you were driving a car for the first time. This wasn't like Cruising USA, which, I mean, it's a fun game, but it's not. You're controlling a car, but it doesn't handle like a car. It handles like you're driving a fucking scooter.
It's an arcade game. Yeah, it's different.
Yeah,
arcade driver.
And yeah, and it's fine for that. But this game, it felt the car had a weight to it. You couldn't just hold down the gas and press the turn button, and that's all you did. You had to be really really intricate with your braking
and
techniques.
And you had to know your car.
Yeah, and you had to know the track, which to me is like the best part of a hardcore racing simulation. Really intimately knowing the track you're racing on, and just the feeling of when you complete a lap and you nail all your braking and everything. It's just such a great feeling to me, and I love these games because of that.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. That's the same thing that draws me into driving games.
Yeah, and like I said, I couldn't give two shits about cars. It's totally not my thing, but there's something very appealing about completing just the perfect hot lap with your car, and like I said, nailing the turns, all the apexes on the turns, hitting the straightaway at that perfect angle. It's just so satisfying to me. And Gran Turismo was really the first game to reward you for doing that.
Yeah, I agree. And it was definitely a trendsetter. A lot of people copied it since. A lot of people still copy it.
Yeah, and a lot of people copied it well. Like, I love the Forza series. Like, hats off to the team that makes that. I think in some ways they've surpassed Gran Turismo.
But that's where they got their inspiration. So
right, and I'm all for that. I'm all about having more of these games to play. I will buy every single one of them and play the shit out of them. So, but that's all I got to say about Gran Turismo. Unless you have anything to add, go ahead and move on to your next pick.
My next pick is going to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time for the Super Nintendo. And the reason why is because this was the first. I played this game a lot in the arcades where it was just called Turtles in Time. But for me, it was seeing it on the Super Nintendo was the first time I ever felt like I was actually getting the true arcade experience at home. Like, everything that was in the arcade was reproduced pretty faithfully and added levels in the home version. And you just, as far as arcade beat-em-ups, to this day, home console versions of arcade beat-em-ups, you can't do better than Ninja Turtles 4 on the SNES. It's just that good. It's the ultimate beat-em-up party game.
Yeah, I'm kind of reading about this as we go along, because this is one you actually added to your list right as we were starting this, so I didn't research it at all.
Yeah, it needed to be on there though.
Yeah. I don't recall if I ever actually played this one. I mean, of course, I played a lot of the Ninja Turtles games. I mean, who didn't? Back in the 90s.
Ninja Turtles still stands as probably my biggest fandom. If I ever had to tell someone something that they didn't know, that they wouldn't know about me, just from meeting me, would be that I'm a gigantic Ninja Turtles dork. And Turtles in Time was like, it was like the game at the arcade for me and my buddy to play. We would bike down to Piccadilly Circus at Harmar Mall in Roseville.
Good old Harmar.
And
I drive by it every day to this day on my way home from work.
There used to be an arcade there. This called Piccadilly Circus, and it was closed down. I must have been like 12 or 13 when they closed it down or something. But before they closed it down, it was the place to go in Roseville to play Turtles 4, Street Fighter 2, to play Skee-Ball, anything like that. To play like T2, the arcade game. They had all those awesome classics there, like hard-hitting action games. And we would go down there every week and spend our entire allowances on this machine, or the Simpsons, or the X-Men. You know, any of those amazing like Konami arcade experiences.
They're like the Konami, and just like all your friends walk right and beat people up.
Pretty
games.
much.
We're all the best. It sounds like it. They sound really dumb when you put it that way, but they're so much fun.
Like Turtles 4 was the only one out of those big Konami arcade games. You didn't see a Simpsons conversion. You didn't see an X-Men conversion. Turtles 4 was the only one that made it, and it baffles me because those other two games would have done amazingly well on the home consoles. But
to back up your point exactly here, and this ties in so well to my last discussion. It's kind of insane. Yeah, like you said, if they had ported the X-Men and the Simpsons games to the consoles at the time, they would have sold tons, and kids would have played them and had a lot of fun with them. And they actually did release the X-Men and the Simpsons arcade games on Xbox Live Arcade a few years ago. And my cousin, the one I had mentioned in my last story, we actually lived together 3 years ago in Moorhead, Minnesota for about 6 months. Just circumstances lined up to where we both ended up in the same place and we lived together. And I shit you not, me and that same cousin, we bought they re-released X-Men for Xbox Live Arcade, and we played that like every single night, just me and him. We were like, 23, 24 at the time. So like even as adults, we're playing that game.
Konami was the king of side-scrolling beat-em-ups at the time.
Oh yeah, no, that's indisputable, and I think I don't think it was this one that they re-released for Xbox Live Arcade. I think it was the original the TMNT Arcade.
I think they did both, but they did a remake of this one for Xbox Live Arcade.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. It was
Turtles,
I remember
in
that.
Time reshelled.
Yep, I never bought it, but I did actually. I remember playing the demo of it.
It was shit because
it's a remake. Nobody wants a remake.
Not only that, but in the original arcade version, when you attack, you always attack left or right. In this version, they had attacks in all 8 cardinal directions, which is bullshit. It didn't feel right. And all the turtles kind of looked the same, whereas in the arcade game, their bandanas were so bright and colorful that it was clearly obvious which turtle was which and where they were on the screen. Mm-hmm. It just felt muddy and stupid and unnecessary.
Yeah. And I think what you had mentioned, that this is the first time you felt like the arcade experience had been brought home, which I think is a really important point to bring up, because looking at this game and kind of thinking about what other arcade ports were out at the time, this definitely had to be one of the best out there.
Well, I mean, I've played the shit out of, and even in recent years with like MAME and stuff, I've played the shit out of both the Super Nintendo version of this game and the original arcade version of this game. And I mean, as a hardcore fan who's played a lot of both, I can clearly tell the differences. But as a kid, not investing that much time into like noting every little tiny fucking detail, I really couldn't tell the difference. Like, the controls were there, the characters were there. Even better than that, making me not want to go to the arcade because this game had different levels. It had several different bosses and levels, so it was even more so. It had options to change the turtles' colors so that you could play them with the television show colors or with the action figure colors. So you could have them you could have these turtles represent what the color of their green skin was in regards to their action figure counterparts, or what they were on the show. So if you had it in, I think they called it comic mode, but it was action figure mode, then they would have just white eyes like the figures had. And then you could also have it normal, which was like, white eyes with black pupils to represent the television show. And as a kid who was like, I would eat up anything Turtles related, and as an adult I still do the same thing, but it was so awesome because I could play out a game with my little toys and then play the game on the Super Nintendo and live out my fantasies with my figures. It was so fucking cool.
Yeah, there definitely is something to be said for that too. Yeah, to reenact sort of your your cartoon and your toy sort of imaginative fantasies within the video game is I completely agree with what you're saying. I've had that in maybe not with this game, but certainly with other franchises and other properties. So yeah, everything you say about it is absolutely the truth. This is one at some point during this week I will seek out and play it, even though it's after this list, just to experience this. I will definitely seek it out.
If you have time, come over to my house. I've got the arcade version running perfectly, the 2-player European, so you can choose your turtle instead of having player 1 always be Leonardo, et cetera, and so on. Come over and we'll both play. It's so fucking good. I got one
cool. Yeah, we'll
one
do that
last thing
sure.
I want to say about this game, and that is that if you haven't played it, fucking play it. That's all I got to say.
There you go. If you haven't played it, fucking play it. And another game, if you haven't played, you should fucking play right now. But I can't imagine anybody has never played this game, and that's Sim City, the original Sim City for I don't know. I guess it's the PC DOS version is the most common one. It was released for all the personal computers at the time. There's a Super Nintendo version out there, I think. Probably there's so many versions of the original SimCity, but I'm specifically referring to the original DOS version that was released because that's the one that I played, and I think most people have played, and really they are all pretty similar. But this is a game changer, not because it reinvented a genre. It pretty much invented a genre.
Yeah, it was completely groundbreaking.
And I mean, there were games before it that had sort of toyed with the whole playing God sort of thing. And I guess this maybe isn't so much playing. It's sort of like you're playing a god / mayor. It's weird, but it works. And this is one of those games that you can just sit around for hours and have no clear objective of what you want to do, but still sit there and have just endless amounts of fun with. Just starting with a blank plot of land, just grass, and creating your own little civilization on top of it, and building the roads, and deciding where your football stadium is. And if you don't like it, or people are making you angry, you can stick Godzilla on them. I think that is one of the best features of this game, and one that I read an interview with Will Wright. I think it was taken from somewhere around when this game was released, and he thought it was a really important features of the game to not only let people create something, but let them destroy it. And that to me is it's so brilliant. And not many games up to this point let you really create something to this level of detail, but also let you destroy it, which I don't know. As a kid playing this, it was always my favorite part, is building something up and then sending in like an earthquake and a tornado and like 3 Godzillas and having them just destroy it.
Yeah, it was pretty fucking satisfying to have the monster come in and attack the city after you're like, you know what? Fuck these people. I'm gonna bring in a tornado and wipe out your entire fucking street system. How do you like that?
Yeah, you think your taxes are too high? Well, how's
Eat a hurricane, dick.
Right. And I think that really, to me, at the time it came out, playing it as a kid, I don't know if I would have invested the time that I did if I didn't know that when it was all said and done, I could just terrorize these people.
I know, because when you're first doing it, you're like, oh, I'm going to be really careful and try to make this as good as possible. And, this is like my little baby. And then you get to that point, you're like, fuck my baby. My baby is going directly out with the bathwater at this point.
Right. And I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I had a lot to say about this game.
This is a big delinquent game in the early 90s, because it was at a time when like you said, every computer could run this shit. And I remember in my elementary school that people would bring in their copy of SimCity and install it on like the 16-bit Apple computers, and like teacher wasn't looking, and you'd sit there and just play SimCity. It was a total rebel delinquent thing to be playing at the time, which sounds really weird considering the legacy that the series has now with The Sims.
And the weird thing is, you can learn a lot from SimCity. This is probably more educational of a game than most educational titles that were released at the time were. Like you learned about city planning, you learned about, residential and industrial zoning, you learned about, taxation and the government's role in, the lives of citizens. You learned so much from this game, and you didn't realize it. And it's kind of funny because it's not really that much of a rebel game to play if you really think about it.
No, it isn't. But at the same time, that's how it was used because it was better than learning. But you are learning.
Yeah,
you are. Yeah,
exactly. Those are the best educational games. The ones that you're learning, but you have no freaking clue that you're learning. And I actually. It's funny how much of this is tying into things I've done on Retrovolve, but I have a article on Retrovolve called PC Edutainment Ruined My Childhood that you can look up that will kind of elaborate on how I feel about the topic of early 90s edutainment.
That was an extremely good read as well. That was actually one of the first ones I read after I started working for the site.
Yeah. So yeah, go and read that. You'll kind of get a better. I won't sit here and rant about it for 20 minutes like I otherwise would. You can just go read that. But on the topic of SimCity, it's just I haven't played the original version in quite a long time. I obviously played a lot of SimCity 2000 and SimCity 3000 even when that came out. Haven't really played any of them since.
I think the last one I played was 2000. Because it came with my gateway computer.
Right, exactly. And I don't know, it just really, really defined that, like I said, the sort of playing God sort of game. Even before, this probably was actually around the same time as the original Civilization. And they are sort of different games in a way, but with the same sort of foundation.
Well, they're very different games. Civilization is a real-time strategy game where you're fighting each other.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a competitive aspect to it.
Well, I will admit that I'm a bigger fan of the Civ series, but only because I'm a violent son of a bitch and I like to kill people.
Yeah, and actually, Civ 2 was on my honorable mentions list for this podcast because I love the Civ series as well.
Civ series is great. I still haven't done everything. I still haven't even tried every world leader in 5, and I've had it since the day it came out.
I just think this game in particular had a bigger impact. More people played this than played Civ or Civ 2. Nothing against those games. This is a more memorable game, a more groundbreaking game, and just the story of it is super interesting too. It started, SimCity started as I guess mod isn't the right word, but Will Wright's first game for the PC was called Raid on Bungling Bay, where you're like an airplane and you're going around bombing just these areas. And there was a mode in that game to where you could edit your own map, and that gave him the inspiration to make this game. Because he's like, well, editing my own map and creating these buildings and these roads is way more god damn it, is way more fun than, the actual, airplane missions itself. So he just made a whole game on top of that. And when he originally sold the game to Broderbund, one of the people that, one of the executives that sort of signed off on it and agreed to bring the game in and publish it was Don Daglow, who created Utopia for the Intellivision.
Which is a great game in its own right.
Right, which is, I guess it's more of a pre-Civilization game, but it has a lot of, I think he saw a lot of Utopia in SimCity. I think he kind of saw that a lot of things that I set, I kind of set forth in Utopia, Will Wright has kind of expanded on in a way and made a better version of. I just saw the connection there and thought it was kind of cool, but and I love Utopia. That's one of my favorite retro games ever.
There's definitely a connection there. I mean, Utopia was, I think, the first game I ever played where you made a city in any way, and SimCity was the first game where it felt really good. SimCity was the first one where it felt really real. Utopia didn't feel real. You had giant chickens and things on the map to represent stuff, but
Right.
for like farming or whatever. But SimCity was the one where it's like, yeah, I can micro and macro manage this shit. I got full
Yeah,
control
exactly.
over the lives of individual people, and I
Yeah.
feel like a god, a mayor god,
Yeah.
as you said, yeah.
And SimCity, how it differed in another way from Utopia is that you could play it on your own. You could technically play Utopia by yourself, but it was just basically you're just trying to rack up a high score, and then the other of the two islands just sat and got overrun by savages or whatever. That's one we actually need to play against each other sometime and make a video out of, is Utopia. 'Cause that would be
That'd
badass.
be awesome. I'd be down for that.
Let's do like drunken Utopia
Is it on
sometime.
your flashback console? That's
It
awesome.
is. That's where I actually have an original copy of it with the manual and the overlays and everything that I just bought for like 10 cents at a swap meet.
Totally
or
worth
something.
every penny. All 10
Yeah,
of them.
so-
No, it's worth more than that. It's a good game.
Oh, it's
But
so good.
SimCity is also one of those games. You mentioned playing it alone, but SimCity is one of those games that kind of brought parents and kids together because, like, I know my buddy, his dad was like a computer guy, and I heard stories. I didn't actually witness it, but he and his dad used to sit and like design cities together and stuff. Because it's harmless enough that you wouldn't mind playing it with your parents, but it's cool enough that you wouldn't mind playing it with your parents. So like
Yeah,
you said,
exactly.
It's like entertainment, but the fun side of it.
Yeah, and like kind of with that is like there were. I don't know if they were necessarily for this, but I remember seeing them for SimCity 2000. You could buy like third-party expansion packs with just like boatloads of like cities people had created on it. It did develop like a really, really huge community.
And this is before the internet, where you could quickly swap mods.
Right. Yeah. You actually had to go to like CompUSA and buy like a jewel case just with these things that people had created. Which it sounds so archaic.
I bet
now.
if you were really smart back then, though, you could have swapped them around on a BBS.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Half
but
of people listening don't even know what a BBS is.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, when I was a kid, I had no fucking idea.
Back in the dark ages, before the internet.
Yeah. Speaking of the dark ages, go to one of your next picks. That's not a dig at any of your picks. I'm just saying we're a retro gaming podcast. That I was reaching on that segue.
Okay.
I will admit.
I wish I would have left an older title for this, but my next pick is going to be Dance Dance Revolution for the arcades, and there had been games beforehand that incorporated exercise into video games, like games that used the power pad for the NES. And there were other, probably, I don't remember any of them, but there were probably other arcade games that had some sort of a physical side to them. But DDR was really that game that, like, it made nerds lose weight. Because, like, I had friends in school that played DDR, and, like, they had, like, fucking followings at Aladdin's Castle Arcade at Rosedale Mall. Like, now I don't know what it is anymore. I think it was like a poker store for a long time. But it used to be that was like the next Roseville arcade for me. And they always had the latest DDR machine. And there was always a bunch of like little Asian kids and then like a bunch of little white kids, sitting around there, playing DDR. And you'd have one guy who was like the skinny, acne-ridden dork, and he would get up there and he would just start breaking out some.
He just rule
he would
that
just
shit.
fucking destroy it, and you're like, oh my god, that kid like pissed his pants next to me in science class, and he's like dancing a DDR god here at the mall. But no, I'm being extremely unfair. The people who I knew, who I went to school with, who played DDR. I'm saying this because they might listen to this. The people who I knew who were really, really good at DDR, who played it at Aladdin's Castle, they were excellent, excellent dancers. I mean, like, I wouldn't be surprised if a number of them are actually incorporating dance into their lives now, because this got people into it, and the music was catchy, the gameplay was simple, but simple to pick up and try playing, but difficult to master. And there was so many different versions of so many different songs and so many different difficulty levels, excuse me, that you could play this forever.
Yeah, when you texted me your picks, I looked at this and thought, that is a fucking great pick. And one I didn't even for a moment think of, but an absolutely fucking brilliant pick for this list, because there was nothing like it before DDR. Absolutely nothing.
And before DDR, video games were a completely and utterly, without any shadow of a doubt, a sedentary pastime.
Right, and this is a game I am horrible at. I've played it maybe 2 or 3 times. I suck at, but it was a phenomenon. If like when I was in high school, like it was exactly like you said. Like there were these people that they were really good at this game, and they were like gods. Like you couldn't believe what these people were doing. And I remember I had a friend in high school who, this was on the console version, but he had the PS2 and 4 dance pads, and you could do a mode where you were going across all 4 dance pads, and he did it flawlessly. And like I remember watching this and being like, that is fucking amazing. That's the most amazing thing I've ever seen in a video game, ever, period. Like, it was so incredibly amazing how good some of these people got at this game. And yeah, it's just, it rejuvenated arcade gaming, for one, in the 2000s, which arcade gaming was dead.
Oh, yeah.
It was dead. Like, it got people playing arcade games.
There was a couple of big fighting games at the time that would draw people to the arcades, but for the most part, the whole fucking place was dead, except for the DDR corner, where they had the latest DDR machine, and there would just be people with their backpacks and coats lined up, quarters all across the bottom of the screen, people in line to play, and some fucking crazy bastard just kicking ass at the game.
No, you're absolutely right. This was more than a gaming phenomenon. This was a cultural phenomenon.
I agree.
Like, it was inescapable. It was everywhere. And like I said, I'm terrible at this game. Have barely ever played it. Probably never will play it again. But I can recognize how absolutely important this game was to gaming. And look what came after it. I mean, if it weren't for this, I doubt Guitar Hero and Rock Band ever would have existed. Given it's a little different sort of a game, but it really established music-based games as a legitimate way for a developer to make money and make a game that people were interested in.
100%. I completely agree. I mean, there's still, to this day, a giant, huge cult following for dance-related games. And I mean, Beatmania has kind of taken over the home market of DDR because it's a free program. You can download Beatmania, download someone else's move combinations for it. You buy your own USB dance pad. People spend outrageous amounts of money buying really durable, responsive dance pads and building them themselves with plexiglass and wood and making these amazing things. And yeah, I mean, none of that would exist without DDR. None of it.
Yeah, and to me, this game ranks highly on the list, if not only for one reason. I mean, obviously for more reasons, but it appears in an episode of King of the Hill, which is my favorite television show, bar none, period. And the fact that it was that culturally important to appear on King of the Hill, when Bobby and the Japanese girl are playing it in the streets of Japan, and it's like going back to what I said, cultural phenomenon. It was bigger than gaming. It got people that never played games before interested in gaming, but it also got people that had been playing games forever and sitting, playing Final Fantasies to get up off their ass and dance, which I think is amazing. I never liked it. I never got into it, but it was a phenomenon, and it's super important to gaming. And I'm so glad you added this tier list. It's a brilliant pick, to be honest.
I have one friend who hopefully, when I post this video to my Facebook, I've known him since high school, and he was one of the big kids like me, and he got so into DDR that he came back from summer vacation, and instead of being a fat kid, he was now completely and utterly ripped. And he went from being a nobody to having beat women off with a stick. It was just an amazing transformation, and it was all because of DDR.
Yeah, and that's super cool to me.
Awesome.
I love that. Yeah.
If I had better hand or better leg-eye coordination, I would have loved to have done that. And after I saw his transformation, I was like, I really like the music. I'm fucking shit at the game, but I should totally do this. And I went to the arcade and tried practicing. I'm like, well, this is a bad place to practice because that kid over there is looking at me like I'm a fucking idiot. So I'm gonna get a home version. I got a home version, and I was like, yeah, this was a waste of money. I'm gonna go sell this stuff on Collab.
And I'm actually just remembering this now that we're talking about this game. This is the last. This game is the last video I have of my dad before he passed away. One of my friends in high school took it. She brought over DDR. She was friends with both me and my sister, and it's a video of my dad playing DDR, and just horrible at it, obviously.
Well,
but he's like laughing and having an incredible time sucking at this game, and it's like one of the most cherished things that like I can watch now because it's like the last like filmed video of my dad, like the way I remember him, just this goofy son of a bitch, like having fun. And my dad didn't like video games at all, and he was playing a video game that he sucked at and was having fun.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah, man, DDR. It's amazing how much I love this game for having played it twice and being terrible at it.
Yeah, I'm wretched at it. I mean, I had a girlfriend who was really good at it way back, like when I was like 21 or something. But I was never ever good at it, and I still hold it pretty fondly in my heart. And beyond that, I just think that it deserves to be mentioned when you talk about games that really changed video games.
It changed the landscape of video games. It absolutely did. And maybe this is an idea for another video. We need to have a DDR off between two of the world's worst DDR players.
As long as it's not actually videotaped of me dancing, because I don't want to.
Oh no, it's going to be videotaped.
No. The screen is fine, but I don't want to be jiggling all over the place on the internet.
All right, well, we'll talk about this later. You have anything more to add about DDR?
That's all I had to say about DDR, but yeah.
Yeah, like I said, this is such a great pick. I'm so glad you thought of this, because I never would have in a million years, but once I saw it on your list, I was like, that's fucking brilliant. I love it. So anyways, on to I think this is my last pick.
I believe so.
It is. I saved my heavy hitter for last, I think.
Too.
And that would be Doom.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I even need to say anything else. It's fucking Doom! It had a movie starring The Rock about it. The movie sucked, but...
Better than Doom 3.
Right. I think 2 episodes ago we talked about Wolfenstein on our Wolf-inspired games, which didn't make any sense but this, of course, came after Wolfenstein, and Wolfenstein really was the prelude to the era of the FPS game. I think it really innovated it in a lot of ways, but in terms of just overall changing the game, changing the landscape of gaming, it had to be Doom in this instance, just because it took what Wolfenstein 3 did and just turned everything up to 11. Like, the settings were way more awesome. Like, it wasn't just like this gridded maze that you were walking through. It was this dynamic Martian world with crazy monsters.
Why did it turn it up to 11? Why not just have 10 be the top? Because this one goes to 11.
This goes to 11. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's what Doom did. It really was like Spinal Tap to first person shooters.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it really just cranked up just the ridiculousness that much more. And not only from a gameplay standpoint, but from how moddable this game was and how
God.
Like that, I think that really, really separated the game. I mean, it was a great game on its own, but it had so much more shelf life from just how easily you could mod it and share your mods. I think it was like the WAD files that could be shared on. It was like the Doomwads.
Yep, the WAD files are the ones that sets up what the game is like.
Yeah, Doomwad. That's what I call my my ejaculatory process, if you will, the Doomwad.
The Doomwad. Welcome to the Doomwad.
I'm pulling out
the Doomwad.
Open your lungs for the Doomwad. That's horrible.
Baby. I'm gonna hit you with my Doomwad.
Hit you with the Doomwad. There's the show title. Hit you with the Doomwad.
Hit you with the Doomwad.
God damn it. Anyways,
what was that that tool that you could get that would have it was basically like an official Doom builder that
I don't remember off the
Doom
top
builder,
of my head.
or like
Yeah. It might have been. And I remember going back to kind of what I said about the SimCity games. Like there were tons of like third-party like expansions that you could buy that just like, oh, let's go and download a bunch of WAD files off the internet and package them on a disc and sell them. Like there's
no quality control at the time, no intellectual property rights.
No, not at all. And I guess there didn't really need to be in a way. Really. I don't know. It's kind of a gray area because it's not like officially licensed content, but at the same time,
it was the era of like computers were for the computer savvy, as opposed to now where it's like pretty much everyone's connected, which is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, aside from that and the gameplay, the fucking music in Doom is like you never heard like heavy metal like this in a video game before, and given it did rip off a lot of famous heavy metal songs, but I think that was awesome.
Yeah, what's wrong with that? I mean, as long as you can get it in the game without this little, at the time, small developer having to pay insane royalties to, fucking Motorhead or whatever, why not? It's different enough where it's its own thing. It's just that you can hear the riffs in it and you're like, shit, that's fucking Metallica.
Right. Yeah, and just imagine though if like that's something I would recommend everybody go out and do is like go find like Doom, whether it be on the original system or like you can get it on Xbox Live Arcade or whatever. Go play Doom. Turn all the music down and just play the fucking Ace of Spades over and over by Motorhead, and it'll be an amazing experience.
Well, actually, honestly, if you have a computer, the best way, you still have to buy the game because you need to buy the WAD file. But the best way to play Doom on a modern computer is ZDoom. It's all one word, ZDoom, and it allows you to play the old Doom WAD files on a widescreen display.
Oh, right. Yeah,
and it's fucking great. It's exactly what you want. It's right back there. I mean, like, it just looks the same. It just looks better because it's on a newer computer. But, yeah, it's perfect. I mean, like, you were mentioning the music, and, like, the Atari Jaguar has probably the most faithful PC console port of Doom, but there's no music. There's no music because they couldn't fit it on the cartridge. And
that's a bummer.
It's a total fucking game ruiner. It's because the game is there, and the game looks almost exactly like the PC version. Obviously, it doesn't control the same because it's a controller and not a keyboard, but it looks perfect, but there's no music, so it's like, fucking forget it. He made me play the Super Nintendo version, which looks like shit, but it sounds good.
Right. So, in summary, go get the Atari Jaguar version of Doom and an Atari Jaguar and a copy of the Overkill album by Motorhead on vinyl. Turn that shit on, play some Atari Jaguar Doom, and you've got the ultimate Doom experience.
Or if you can't find that Motorhead album, go download any mid to late Judas Priest album. That'll work too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You or even get some. How am I blanking on this right now? I have no idea. I love Judas Priest so much. There's just been so much excitement in the last hour and a half that I can barely think right now.
Well, what was that album? Punisher? No,
Painkiller.
Fucking
Get fucking Painkiller. Yeah. That's such a great. That's not even a. What's the fucking lead singer of Judas Priest? How am I not? No. Rob Halford. No. I don't even think that's a Rob Halford album.
Yeah, it is. That was the last one he was on.
Let me look this up.
I think that was the last Halford album before he dipped out.
You are right. You are absolutely correct.
That was still really fucking good. I mean, there were other really good Judas Priest albums.
Dude, the fucking album cover
it's badass.
For this.
So badass.
It's a dragon motorcycle that has chainsaw blades for a wheel and a knight with chrome eagle's wings soaring above an apocalyptic metropolis.
The only way it could be cooler is if it was like a bat killing a dragon with a sword.
I was gonna say this might have to be the next in our photoshopped 80s metal images for the show. What was it? The Doomwad's coming for you or whatever.
Yeah.
I'll somehow fit in Doomwad with the cover of the Judas Priest Painkiller, and that'll be the show image. Anyways, back to Doom. I don't know. There's only so much you can say about Doom. I mean, it is.
How many people have killed someone and had the murder blamed on Doom? Jesus.
Right.
That tells you how metal it is.
Exactly.
Right
my
there.
favorite implementation of Doom is that that video that came out. I guess it was a while ago, but it came out like 7 or 8 years ago. It was from like a Microsoft press conference or something where Bill Gates inserted himself into Doom. Like it's footage of Doom, and then it stops, and then Bill Gates like walks out into the Doom
That's
level
awesome.
and starts talking about Windows 95.
I haven't seen that, but that's awesome.
You have to see it. And he's wearing like a trench coat and holding a shotgun. And like he's talking about Windows 95.
That's actually kind of in poor taste. Considering the events of the Columbine massacre.
Well, this was before that
okay.
even,
I was gonna
obviously.
say,
yeah, because it was for when he was touting Windows 95 as like the new ultimate gaming platform.
Trench coat threw me
But it's
off.
the best because he's talking about Windows 95 holding a shotgun. And then, like, halfway through his spiel, like, one of the monsters from Doom, like, appears on the side of the screen, and Bill Gates, and is just, like, nerdy voice is like, "Don't interrupt me," and, like, fires, like, just shoots the fucking
so
shotgun.
he sounded like me? I think you were just doing a Tim impression there for a second.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
No, Bill Gates has got, I think, at least an octave on you yet. But he's just talking about Windows 95 and then just blows away an alien with the shotgun and then just continues talking about Windows 95. It's the best. It's so awesome. Good. I will link to it right under this under this show on Retrovolve if you want to check that out if you haven't seen it. It's fucking hilarious.
Here comes the Doomwad, baby.
I might need to find somebody that's better at Photoshop than I am, but I think we need that Painkiller album cover with Bill Gates holding a shotgun and "Here Comes the Doomwad" written above it.
I'm pretty damn good at Photoshop, actually.
All right, well, if you can produce that somehow, maybe let's see.
I can tell by the pixels, and because I've seen quite a few shops in my time.
It doesn't even have to be a good one. It just has to look.
I can do
at least.
I can make it look. Make it look as shit.
Let's see. I'm gonna Google image search. Bill Gates riding a motorcycle. Seeing if I. Here's one of him sitting passenger seat in a golf cart.
Even better. Does he have a shotgun?
That's so.
Oh, he's not riding shotgun, bitch.
Well, he's riding.
He's
riding shotgun. He doesn't actually have a shotgun.
Oh, I thought it was like Road Warrior. Like he's in the side, like the fucking humongous or whatever, and he's just got like a crossbow machine gun. And that'd be awesome.
Riding shotgun with the shotgun. The Bill Gates story.
Just put down the gasoline.
Anyway, anything you want to add on to our insightful discussion of Doom?
I could never say anything else about Doom that hasn't already been said.
Fair enough. On to your last pick, then.
My last pick is my favorite video game of all time. And
Werewolf the Last Warrior.
My second favorite video game of all time. And I say that without any hint of exaggeration or hyperbole, is Chrono Trigger for the Super Nintendo. And I got this game when I was just first, discovering that there was like the ability to tell complex stories in games. And it was the first game for me that really sucked me into the characters and really made me care about the characters on screen as people. And there was games that did this before Chrono Trigger, like Final Fantasy 3/6 came out the year before. But this was the first one. And it was an easy enough turn-based role-playing game where it wasn't super challenging. You could just enjoy the story and not have to grind for hours to get good at it. But for me, the first time beating this game was so awesome and bittersweet that I can't even properly convey it in words. It was awesome because the ending was amazing and everything wrapped up the way I wanted it to, but it was bittersweet because it was over. But then it was awesome again because the game had the amazing feature of having New Game Plus, where you could start the game over again with all of your old items and stats, well, most of your old items, again, and you could beat the last boss whenever you wanted to in the course of the game to get a different ending. And there was, I believe, 13 different endings to the game, which is pretty impressive for a game made in 1995.
Yeah. I'm sorry. This whole time you were talking...
You're looking at pictures of Bill Gates with a shotgun, aren't you?
No, but close. I typed in Bill Gates motorcycle, and the first thing that came up was fucking Putin, Vladimir Putin, driving like a fucking tricycle bike.
What?
This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
That's awesome.
So I think this needs to be photoshopped in with Bill Gates riding the painkiller bike. Like they can be like flying next to each other. I will send you this picture.
Yeah, send me all the media and I'll do it.
But anyways, back to Chrono Trigger.
No,
I was
Chrono
listening.
Trigger is just the first game that really, in any genre, that sucked me in and made me care about the characters. And like you really get to know everyone in the game, other than the main character, who's kind of an avatar for you. But you know he does have a story.
I do like that, and unfortunately, I don't really have anything to say about this game because it's another one I just haven't played, and another one I have bought. It's on my Wii Virtual Console. It's been there for like 2 years. I bought it with the intention of playing it, just haven't done so. But it sounds a lot like what you're saying about this game. You know, the sort of avatar main character. How you sort of felt it was bittersweet when you finished it. It kind of it reflects how I felt about Ocarina of Time. Very different games in certain ways, obviously, but I get what you're saying in regards to how it impacted you as a person, and obviously even more than just a gamer.
Oh, for sure, this game completely shaped my perceptions to come for years later. I mean, this game got me into writing fiction, which is what I do now, and which got me into writing, which is what I do now. And I mean, if it wasn't for the character interactions and the way it was displayed and the American translation, I would not be who I am today. And I know that sounds so fucking cheesy and cliche, but it really is, at least for the time, a story that had never been told in a game. And I don't know I can't look at this game without nostalgia goggles, so I don't know if it would hold up as well today, given the level of storytelling that they can put in games now. But for 1995, for 16 bits, for the Super Nintendo, for me, this was an eye-opener. And this was really like, holy shit, games can actually move you.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just this. It sounds like you having the exact sort of attachment that I had with Ocarina of Time, and the things you said about it sounds sort of cheesy that it had that big effect on your life. Again, going back to my Retrovolve content, which I love shamelessly plugging, I wrote an article entitled "How." I don't remember exactly. It was like how Ocarina of Time made me a better person, or something dumb like that.
What it was called.
Yeah, but it's absolutely the truth for me. It just sort of the parables that it told really spoke to me as a young teenager, and like I said, like when Link was leaving Kokiri Forest, it really hit home with me because when I played that game, I had moved away from my hometown for the first time in my life, and that feeling of you leave the Kokiri Forest, but there's this whole big huge world for you to explore with all sorts of new things. Like, it made me realize that I can either dwell on the fact that I don't live where I used to, where I am the most familiar with and where I know the most people, or I can view it as an opportunity to see new things. And, it's just little things like that, I think, that games can really communicate to young, impressionable minds, like with you and Chrono Trigger.
I agree.
That I think make them so important, and it's a big reason why we're still talking about them on the internet.
Well, yeah.
How many years later?
I mean, and maybe years down the line, someone else will be saying the same thing about I don't know, Gears of War. No, I'm just kidding. There's no substance to Gears of War. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, we should.
Or like some, maybe about like Fallout 3, something like that.
Or any kind of contemporary storytelling game like that.
Right, and I hope there is. Like, I'm not even though we spend most of our time talking about retro games, I hope people are talking about today's games with the same amount of reverence and whatever that we are talking about the games that happened 20 years ago. From now. I hope the retro gaming scene still exists in the future, and they're talking about today's games that are existing now, 20 years from now, in the same way.
The retro gaming community is only going to get bigger. I mean...
Right. And that's the beautiful part of it. Like, it just keeps expanding, I love, like, the Atari and up into the NES stuff, but as time goes on, we can start incorporating, the PlayStation 2, and, not long from now, 10 years from now, we're going to be talking about Xbox 360 as part of this. And I think that's really cool. I love that, and I embrace that aspect of retro gaming.
Well, I like to think about it on even a more grandiose level, like, what's going to happen in 300 years when someone... Because, a lot of these old consoles, they're going to last that long with the proper maintenance. 300 years from now, some kid's going to pick up a copy of Chrono Trigger and go, this was my great-great-great-great-grandfather's. I'm going to play this. And he plays it and he's like, wow, that told a really interesting story. I can't believe this was told way back in the 20th century.
Yeah, or 200 years from now, our great-great-great-grandchildren are gonna pick up our family heirloom copies of Werewolf: The Last Warrior and think,
I don't know how
our great-great-great ancestors were fucking geniuses.
I don't know if you and I could have kids, Sandy. I don't know if you and I are ever going to have grandchildren because
What are you talking about, together?
Yeah, together. Because
I don't think that you're right. That is impossible.
I don't think I can get pregnant. I'm sorry to break this to you publicly like this, but
I'm sorry we have to end our podcast. But maybe it is in the best interest.
That was the last episode of the Tim and Andy Show, ladies and gentlemen.
This is taking a turn for the incredibly weird.
This is weird and dark now.
just the way it should be.
Well, that was my last pick, and I don't have a whole lot more to say about it.
Yeah.
You want to compile these together and then put our list together and then maybe mention our honorable mentions?
Yes. Let's do that. I have to pee incredibly bad. We've been sitting here for like 2 hours talking about this. So, yeah, we'll take another just quick last break. Me and Tim will compile our results. We'll be back with our reveal of our top 10 biggest game changers in the history of gaming and reveal a few of our honorable mentions right after the break here on the 4th episode of the Tim and Andy Show on RetroVolve.com. All right, welcome back to the 4th episode of the Tim and Andy Show on RetroVolve.com. And right now, I am going to reveal to you me and Tim's top 10 list of biggest game changers in the history of gaming. At number 10, we actually both picked the same number 10 for this one. no slight to the game, definitely deserves to be on the list, but that is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time for the Super Nintendo.
Makes sense in and of itself. It's nothing super special, but it's special for what it brought home.
Yeah, for the reasons you said, and I might have rated it higher had I actually played it, but that said, I do think everything you said about it is true, does deserve to be on this list, and a good way to kick it off there at number 10.
I love it, but it's just, I absolutely love the game. It's just that in the company of the rest of these giants.
Right. This is an elite list given. So being number 10 on this list is certainly an honor and not a slight.
Definitely.
All right. So moving on then. At number 9, you gave this a 7. I gave it a 9, which will land it at the number 9 spot on the list, and that's Phantasy Star 2 for the Sega Genesis.
Right on.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, this is another one too that maybe would be a little higher had I actually had spent some time with it.
Well, you're not a role-playing gamer. That really changes things up.
No, I really am not, and I never will be. I do enjoy them. I do, but it's hard for me to commit at this age. How many hours into completing one of these games?
There's a lot of time involved.
Yeah, but that is certain. Like I said on the last one, no slight for it to be number 9. At number 8, this is one of my picks. You gave it an 8. I gave it a 7. So this pretty much averaged out right where it needed to be, and that's Gran Turismo for the Sony PlayStation.
Yep, definitely good spot for that game.
Yeah, like I said, it's a game that means a lot to me, but just compared to what else was on the list, I think it's a good spot for it. So, number 7 then, the only non-video game on the list, or any list. I guess not true. On the Wolf episode, I put Teen Wolf. The Teen Wolf
that
DVD.
Can be played on multiple systems, so
including the Panasonic Q.
Yeah, which is a modified GameCube.
Exactly. But no, our number 7 on this list is the Black Hole pinball machine from Gottlieb. You gave it a 5, which is actually higher than I rated it. I gave it a 8, just simply because there's just so much good stuff on this list. This is one of those I could have put it at like 2 or 10, and it was just kind of a coin flip at this point. But
a kind of a tilt shift.
Hey-o. That was pretty good, actually.
There you go.
Good job, Tim.
I have my moments.
It took, this is probably going to be about an hour and 45 minutes in the podcast, but you finally said something useful, so.
I knew I was going to get there.
Just kidding. You haven't actually said anything useful, but you'll get there.
There's still a little time.
Anyways, no, you actually brought up something incredibly useful and something I'm glad you did bring up, and that is the number 6 pick, which I actually rated much higher than you did, interestingly, and I'm kind of disappointed this one didn't go higher, to be honest, but that is Dance Dance Revolution at number 6 on this list. I gave it a 3. You gave it a 9.
I'm fat, though.
Fair enough. I don't know. I think I gave it a little higher rating just because it was kind of an esoteric, offbeat pick, but it worked so well with the list that I commend you for the brilliance of this pick. I really thought that was an excellent addition to the list. But hey, number 6 on the list, not bad at all.
Took me an hour and 47 minutes, but there's a contributing piece to the list.
Let's be honest. This whole podcast, neither of us have said anything that has been in any way beneficial to society in general. So
Purple Monkey dishwasher. What?
Yeah. Here comes the Doomwad.
Look out for the Doomwad, baby.
Yeah. Try that one next time. See how well that goes over in real life implementation in the context in which we have implemented.
I'm getting an eye roll from the lady right now, so.
As you should. You deserve a lot worse than that,
I can hear the eyeball scraping inside the skull. That's the kind of eye roll it is.
Indeed. Anyways, at number 5, smack dab in the middle of the list, Sim City. I gave it a 5, and you gave it a 6, so we were kind of in agreement on that one, certainly.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot right there in the middle at number 5. Right above that, at number 4, is Chrono Trigger for the Super Nintendo. You gave it a 3. I gave it a 6.
I think that's good for it.
Yeah, I'm completely fine with that placement. Like I said, not when I played a bunch, but I realize its importance.
As my favorite video game ever, I'm pretty pleased with that being there.
Yeah, absolutely. At number 3 is Doom, which is weird because we gave it the same ranking. We both gave it a 4, which it ended up at number 3 on the list, which is curious.
Oh, Microsoft Excel. You so crazy.
Yeah, I just think it's I don't know, it's weird. It's
an extremely good spot for Doom, though, because it's very influential, very important, and still fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we once again nailed it with our top 3 here. Then on to our runner-up on the list. We were actually in complete agreement on our number 1 and number 2 here. We picked the exact same games for these spots. At number 2, Super Mario 64.
Yep, definitely.
And at number 1, the game that gave the Mario character his start. So this is sort of serendipitous in the way this works out. I am, of course, referring to Donkey Kong for the arcades,
which absolutely deserves the number 1 spot.
Yeah, I pled my case for that already. You've all heard it. I'm super pleased that that's there. I would have been okay with Super Mario, perhaps, or maybe Doom going in that top spot. But to me, Donkey
Mario
Kong
64. I think that Donkey Kong needed to be above Mario 64.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
The genre which has spawned subgenres. So
it is just like it's just the video game to me. Like when you hear like a video game being like played in a movie, they use sound effects from Donkey Kong. No matter what, it's the weirdest thing. Like that's what they use for the post-production sound effects is Donkey Kong, even if they're playing Xbox 360.
If you've never played Donkey Kong, you have no soul.
Yeah, why are you even listening? Why haven't you killed yourself? No, that's
too much.
That's too far. Don't kill yourself. Play Donkey Kong.
Play Donkey Kong. It's a lot easier.
Yeah, and a lot more fun.
And you can do it more than once.
Exactly. Yeah. Mario can die multiple times. You can't. Yep. Save your life.
Use his up.
And Mario's. Yeah, I don't. Anyways, that went dark in a hurry.
Sure did.
Wow.
That went right down the deep end.
That's right in the deep end. Here comes the Doomwad.
Right.
Oh, this is the worst podcast ever. Anyways, I'm going to run down this list one more time. At number 10, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time. At number 9, Phantasy Star 2. At number 8, Gran Turismo. At number 7, Black Hole Pinball. At number 6, Dance Dance Revolution. At 5, SimCity. At 4, Chrono Trigger. At 3, Doom. At number 2, Super Mario 64. And at number 1, the Tim and Andy Show's number 1 game changer ever, Donkey Kong for the arcade.
Woo!
And that said, I actually texted you before we did the show a few days ago. I was like, I've written about at least 20 down of games I thought of for this list. So we thought it appropriate to have a few honorable mentions included in this list. Even though they didn't make the top 10 list, they certainly deserve to be mentioned on this show very quickly. So I'll let you start off with your honorable mentions.
I have 5 honorable mentions. I guess these could be considered my 6 through 10. But yeah, Street Fighter 2 in the arcade. First really good, engaging fighter.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That could have been on the list easily.
Yeah, it got me into fighting games, which I still suck at, but I like playing them, and it was all due to Street Fighter 2. It was that game everyone emulated, and still does. Then Shenmue, which was the first game I played that made the world feel alive. It had a timing element that felt natural and realistic. It had a world situation that felt realistic and alive. I don't know.
I'm sorry, which game was this again? I was trying to find my list on my phone because I lost it again.
That's okay. Shenmue for the Dreamcast.
Oh, yes, absolutely. This is actually going back to my list of games I need to play, but I thought about this week because Classic Game Room put up their review of this game, and that just reminded me. I was like, fuck, I need to find this game. First, I need to either get my Dreamcast fixed or get a new one before I can play it. But
you can emulate it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not the same to me.
But
Eventually, I will.
Yeah, that's exactly what made me think of Shenmue. Actually, was Classic Game Room.
Yeah. God bless Classic
their
Game Room.
little funky squirrel. I love them.
Yes.
But yeah, Shenmue is great. It was probably one of the reasons I bought a Dreamcast to begin with. That and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. But yeah, Shenmue was fantastic. The Legend of Zelda, which it really deserved to be on the list, but at the same time, it's my list and I don't care. But
yeah, it's actually on my honorable mentions list as well. So it was very, very close to being. It was one of the last few to get cut from mine.
Yeah, it was the second to last to get cut from mine. But the last one being like minutes before we did the show. But yeah, it was the first true adventure game for me. And I mean, I played it probably when I was 6, I guess. I was really young. My cousin introduced it to me, and he was 3, and he had beaten it.
Jesus.
So you can, really young kids can play it, but at the same time, older people can appreciate it too. And it's a great game. Legend of Zelda, for fuck's sake, it's like a cornerstone of gaming. The next one was Final Fantasy VII, which sold millions of PlayStation units. It was the RPG that showed that RPGs could look good in 3D, because before Final Fantasy VII, RPGs were kind of thought of as being like just ugly, but with their specific types of mechanics. But 7 made it go, no, we can make this shit look good and keep it as an RPG.
And yeah, this was actually this Zelda and another of my honorable mentions that I will talk about here in a minute are the last few cuts for me. And as I mentioned before, I'm not an RPG fan, and this nearly made the cut for me. That's how amazing this game is.
It was the last cut for me, and it was kind of hard, actually, when I picked. I didn't want to put more than one game from a series in the list at all, but it was tough for me to pick between 6 and 7, because 6 did so many things that RPGs hadn't done before, but 7 just brought it all to a whole new level.
Yeah, and I know we're still going to get a lot of hate for not having it on the list, even though we both professing our love for it. I still remember the first time I played this game. My friend Matt Shannon, who I know does follow the site, so maybe he's listening. He brought it over. I think I was like 5th or 6th grade at the time, and he had his PlayStation. And I remember it was that first mission where you're like going through it's like this industrial place, and then you fight that scorpion-looking thing.
The number 7 reactor, yeah.
Yeah, the reactor. And I just remember I never played really an RPG game like this, and I was just like, holy fuck, this is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I got my PlayStation because of this game. I had just beaten 6, and 3, whatever, and I wanted more, and the PlayStation had already been out for a while, a couple of years, but I really wanted one, and God bless my mother, she just, out of nowhere, bought me a PlayStation. Like, it wasn't my birthday, it wasn't Christmas, she just knew I really wanted one. Like, how fucking awesome is that?
That is pretty awesome.
I came home from school at the beginning of the school year and went to my room, and there's a PlayStation in the box sitting there. And I went, what is this? And my mom went, I knew you wanted one, so I went out and got you one. And she's like, I know you wanted to play that Fantasy 7 game. And I went, I love you, Mom. And then
this is the best day of my life.
And I opened it up, and there was a demo disc in the system for Final Fantasy VII and a bunch of other Square games. And I was like, she saw the disc come out of the box, and she went, it's the game you wanted, too. And I went, no, Mom, it's a demo disc. They're not going to give away a free game, but the game wasn't out yet. So I sat and played that demo so many fucking times. Just going through the first mission with a couple slight changes. The first mission you had, in this demo version, you had Tifa in your party, and you had access to a couple of summon spells to show off what the game could do. I played through that over and over and over again until the game came out, and then when the game came out, I played hooky from school for at least a week.
That a boy.
And just played FF. Me and my buddies did too. We all 7. And I didn't go back to school till I beat it. I was horrible that semester of I believe it was 9th grade. and but it was fucking worth it. So that was my second to last, and my last honorable mention was Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which I chose because it defined a subgenre of platformer, the Metroidvania subgenre of games. Obviously, there had been Metroid already, which is the bigger side of the Metroidvania conglomeration, but this game incorporated level grinding, item equipment, like to a higher degree, as a much bigger game than Metroid, Super Metroid. But yeah, for me, this was like peanut butter and jelly. I mean, it's like taking two amazing game franchises and putting them together into a synthesizer and coming out with gold. It's perfect.
Yeah. I won't say a whole lot about this. If you kind of want to get my take on the Castlevania sort of game, you can listen to our first episode, the first actual Tim and Andy show episode, where it was the Halloween one where we discussed kind of the creepiest, scariest sort of games. And we talk about, I think it was Simon's Quest on that one, but I think we did delve into a little bit of Symphony of the Night.
And we also talked about Metroid on that episode too.
That's true, we did. So yeah, go check out that episode if you kind of want to hear my take on the franchise there. Did you have any more honorable mentions?
Nope, that was it. On to yours.
All right. So I got quite a few. I won't talk about a lot of them in detail. I'm just going to read off my list that I got here and kind of expand upon them along the way where I feel necessary. The first one I want to mention was Pitfall, because it's actually the last one I cut from my list. Yeah. On my original list, I told you it was either going to be Doom or Pitfall. For the Atari 2600, that version of Pitfall, obviously.
I think you made a good choice.
Yeah, and I mean, Pitfall's amazing. It was the first like adventure platform game ever, and the fact that it came out when it did, like shit.
Yeah, David Crane made some good stuff.
David Crane is the fucking man when it comes to Atari, and yeah.
Even Nintendo, like A Boy and His Blob. I mean,
yeah, that's true. So yeah, I just want to give that a quick mention. I actually do have a Pitfall T-shirt that I wear proudly.
Wait, is it green and has the cover of the box? I have the same T-shirt.
It's one of the best T-shirts.
Awesome
I think I got it at like Target.
I did too.
I was like, how is Target selling this? This is the best.
I got that T-shirt and a couple other like retro gaming T-shirts the same day. They were like $15 at Target a few years ago. I still love that T-shirt though. It's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great shirt. So yeah, great game and a great shirt. So the second on my list is Defender, another early arcade game. Just because this one was just so advanced, past what most arcade games were doing at the time. It had a lot of intricacies to it. This is a game that you couldn't just walk up and play. You kind of had to have some prior knowledge or have somebody to kind of help you with, which you could say maybe wasn't beneficial, but it really was revolutionary in its mechanics. And it's the radar on the bottom of the screen, which I think was a first for
any game.
Yeah, so it laid the groundwork for a lot of games that came after it.
It was a spectacle to watch too, just because the animation was so smooth and colorful in it that it looked amazing.
Yeah, and I have a soft spot in my heart for Defender because it's the only game I ever played on my GameCom. Because I owned a GameCom and my parents got me Williams Arcade Classics, which at first I was like, you bought me this fucking new age system, and the game you got me is a fucking 15-year-old arcade games. Are you fucking kidding me? Which, in retrospect, was the only good game for that system, so they really... Because everything else was just an unplayable mess. And in the process, I gained...
Was okay.
Yeah, it was okay-ish, but yeah.
Lights Out was okay.
I mean, it gave me an appreciation for old retro arcade gaming, which ties in... Believe it or not, I know I haven't dropped many of my Retrovolve pieces on this episode very much. None. No, I don't think any really.
What the fuck is
but
Retrovolve?
There is actually. Yeah. What is video games?
Who am I?
Yeah. But I actually have a piece that I wrote on the original Retrovolve that's on the new one. It's called "A Boy and His GameCom," going kind of tying back to David Crane and "A Boy and His Blob," which I named the piece after. It's amazing how this all ties together. But yeah, it's called A Boy and His GameCom.
Seamless web.
A web of bullshit. Brew.
Brew. I'll drink to that.
But yeah, but it is funny how the Defender for the Gamecom on Williams Arcade Classics, along with like Sinistar and Joust were on there, really helped me appreciate retro gaming, and which was really probably the only thing that good that ever came out of the Gamecom with anybody ever. So I feel kind of unique in that way.
There you go.
Anyways, moving on to one of my next honorable mentions. I'm going to kind of lump these two together because they kind of go hand in hand, even though they were developed by separate companies, and that's Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon.
Good calls.
For the PlayStation. And I don't know, I just thought the reason these didn't make the list, not that they're not great games, just they did borrow a lot from Super Mario 64, and I had a feeling that you were going to put that on the list, so I just kind of kept them out. But they're great. I think Spyro the Dragon especially is important just because it gave you a whole nother dimension. You know, you couldn't just fly at any time, but you could like get the flying power up and like glide around and whatever. It just added another dimension to the genre, which I really liked. And it was the first 3D platformer to get camera control 100% perfect.
I will say that, yeah, for sure. I was going to mention that Crash Bandicoot, while being what I would consider to be a failed mascot character, for a period of time was the PlayStation mascot.
Right. Well, it wasn't failed because of Sony. It was failed because Naughty Dog sold it to Activision, and that's yeah.
Yeah. Well, either way, it
right.
didn't have the lasting appeal of a Sonic or.
But it could have. If it was an in-house Sony property, I think it absolutely could have.
But it wasn't. But at the same time, for a while, that was kind of the. If you look back at old gaming magazines from the time, you look at like Sega has Sonic, Mario, is from Nintendo, and Crash Bandicoot is from PlayStation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it really was the face of the PlayStation, even though it was like a third party.
Only for a couple of years. That couple of years was pretty magical. Yeah,
the first 3 Crash games, as well as that kart racer they had.
Kart racer is my favorite. My favorite game that has that name attached to it.
Yeah, it's awesome. They have some great games under that banner. But moving on, Pokemon Red and Blue.
Good pick.
It just the element of collection and sharing with friends. I think no game did this better, and just how much time and emotion like you invested into your Pokemon and how emotionally attached you felt to them. I can't remember a game pulling that off any better than Pokemon did. And it was such a unique concept because it's like, collecting little insects and animals, and as a kid that's just the coolest thing.
Well, like you mentioned with DDR before, saying it was a cultural phenomenon, I think Pokemon to a much larger degree is a cultural phenomenon.
To this day, I mean, it's not as big as it was in the late 90s, but to this day, it's still a huge deal when a Pokemon game comes out.
It's massive. If you keep an eye on, like, Game FAQ's top games, like, the first, like 3 months before a Pokemon game comes out, and then, like, 6 months afterwards, it's number 1.
Right, yeah. And deservingly so. It's a great franchise. The next one is one... It's kind of a shame that it's an honorable mention because I could see it easily being number 1 on the list, and that's Tetris for the Game Boy. And not so much that it defined the genre, but it made handheld gaming. Like, because that game came bundled with the Game Boy.
Yeah.
And that game alone sold so many fucking Game Boys. I think it was Scott from the Retro Gaming Roundup podcast said you could have hardwired this into the system and sold it as a Tetris machine and people still would have bought it.
Oh, yeah.
For the same fucking price. Like, it was that addictive.
Yeah, Tetris is still to this day one of the highest selling games of all time.
Yeah, and like I said, it didn't just define a platform, it defined a whole sect of gaming. Like, before the Game Boy, portable games with interchangeable carts, it wasn't like it wasn't really a thing yet.
Yeah, it did exist, but only in really small, really shitty LCD form factor.
Right. Like the R-Zone.
Like nothing.
Which came after. But
No. I mean, like, there was a couple of games where it was like you could buy a machine and then put like a screen on, like the screen was the game. The screen and the controls were what you bought, and you snapped it onto this battery unit and played it, and they were LCD games. Like, those existed, but that's nothing like the Game Boy. Mm-hmm. The Game Boy was like a handheld Nintendo, and it was fucking awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, Tetris, you could, I mean, I would not be surprised in the slightest if you could buy a fucking washing machine today that played Tetris. I mean, like, it is on every possible conceivable form. I remember my sister in high school had a keychain that was a little Tetris machine. Cell phones had Tetris on them before they had text messaging. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just I actually still remember, this is like one of my earliest childhood memories that I have. I was probably like 3 or 4, and I was playing. They had like the demo unit of the original Game Boy like mounted to a stand at Target, and I remember playing Tetris, and I remember thinking when I stacked up all the blocks and they hit the top of the screen, that meant I won. So I thought I was like the best Tetris player ever when I was just a small child, because I thought it was just like stack the blocks.
That's adorable.
Right. So I don't know. It's a great game. Supremely important to the industry as a whole.
Are you sure we can't have babies? God damn it.
Anyways, on to my next honorable mention, Halo for the Xbox.
Good pick.
This is kind of, I think, you could argue GoldenEye, I guess, but this was to me was really the next evolution after Doom for FPS games.
You couldn't play GoldenEye online.
Right. Well, you couldn't play the original Halo either. You could too, but I think Halo just took what a lot of GoldenEye did and amplified it, and the fact that you could link systems together. I still remember to this day going to parties and just having like 8 TVs all linked together playing Halo, and it was just the funnest time.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah, and this is like a couple years ago, me and my roommate and a couple of his friends, we dug out my old Xbox and plugged this into my giant 55-inch tube TV and played it for hours, and it's still fun today.
Was that one that you weren't able to bring with you?
Yeah, it
God
was. Damn it. It's just such a shame, but this, like I said, I'm not even a huge shooter guy at all. I don't really play many shooting games, but this to me was another one of those like cultural phenomenon games. Like when it came out, it completely reinvented the genre and took it to a whole nother level, especially with multiplayer.
I'll echo the retro gaming podcast and say that you could have wired Halo into an Xbox and still sold those things.
Oh, holy shit!
Because
yeah,
that was a Halo machine for a long fucking time.
Yeah, I mean, how many people bought an Xbox and Halo and like maybe didn't buy another game for a year, if ever? Like
bots.
Or like they maybe bought some other games, but Halo was really the only game they played. I mean, it sold the system. It established Microsoft as a legitimate console manufacturer. Whether you want to, say that's a good or bad thing, I guess is your opinion. I think it's a good thing. I think it's always good to have new blood being injected into the console manufacturing business. So for that reason alone, on top of its other credentials, just as a game, I think you could argue it for this list, but ultimately got left off. My next one, Mortal Kombat. I guess this kind of goes hand in hand with Street Fighter. I just thought it was it was just so brilliantly violent in a way that no other game was before. And I don't know. To me, ultimately, that wasn't reason enough to put it on the list, but I did want to at least mention it.
For sure.
So, not much to say there. I'm going to kind of cruise through these last few. Sonic the Hedgehog for the Genesis, obviously. A major milestone in platform gaming, but in the end, just used too many elements from other games. Innovated all its own, but just wasn't completely unique enough to put on the list, but still a phenomenal,
Gave Mario a run for his money.
Exactly. It really stuck it to Mario, and for a time put Sega ahead of Nintendo, which I think is an enormous accomplishment. Yep. Grand Theft Auto 3, another one of my picks. Yeah. Not one I played a lot of it as a kid, but really the first huge 3D open world kind of game for consoles, at least.
I played more Vice City than 3.
Yeah, well, I didn't have a PS2 growing up. I had a GameCube, so I to be honest, to this day, haven't played a lot of the early.
I didn't have a PS2 growing up either. I was already an adult with a job by the time that game came out. But at the same time, like, I thought Vice City tapped into the whole, like, sensibilities of movies like Scarface.
Yeah, it had the better soundtrack, certainly.
For sure. But either way, Grand Theft Auto 3 was what the first 2 Grand Theft Auto games look kind of crap, but bringing it to 3D and doing it well really cemented the whole, Rockstar brand.
Yeah, and this is like the first game that was like Rockstar AAA huge deal now. Like before this, like I don't even know, did they release? I guess they did release games as Rockstar before this, but before that they were like some acronym, I don't even remember. But this really, this established Rockstar as like, these guys are for real and they make top-notch quality fucking games. So yeah, it did a lot for the industry. Very controversial game on top of that. A lot of people were talking about it at the time, good and bad. So I think it's definitely an important game to the industry.
Definitely.
My last honorable mention, more of a fun pick for me, a game that I just really liked as a kid and never thought I would like a game to dealing with this subject matter, and that's Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, the original for the PlayStation.
That's a good choice. That kind of goes along with kind of how I feel about Grand Theft Auto, which is, it's kind of like that counterculture thing, but well done.
Yeah, and before Tony Hawk, like, Extreme Sports was just like a marketing gimmick for games. Yeah. And there was never really a really good, fun Extreme Sports game, but this one was like, holy shit, like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is a legitimately, like, well-designed game and a fun game.
What was the first place you played it on? Was the N64 or the PlayStation?
The PlayStation, because that was the first one. I think the N64 version came a few months later, maybe the year after. I think it was just the PlayStation version that was the original.
I only asked because I heard that the N64 version was better, but I played it on the PlayStation.
To be honest, they're pretty much the same, except for the N64 had compressed audio, which to me takes a lot out of the game. The soundtrack to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is such a huge element to that game.
Oh yeah, having all that licensed music is pretty important.
Yeah. And they had it on the 64, but it was like super compressed and like 30-second clips. And it's just, yeah. Oh. I mean, they tried. They did what they could. And but I just think having the full Red Book audio quality version of Superman by Goldfinger is the game or the song that game is most remembered for.
I really like the fact that the first Tony Hawk had a level, I think it was the first level, that took place in Minnesota.
No, yeah, that it was in there. I think that was like halfway through the game.
Oh, was it?
But yeah, it was very. At first, I was like, this doesn't look like Minnesota at all. But looking at it now, it kind of looks like sort of that warehouse district sort of area. Blocky. Sort of. I mean, yeah. I mean, nothing really, in that era really looked exactly like the
But even just having it in there was cool for me because
it was cool.
Minnesota's a very forgotten place when it comes to games.
Yeah, and for the most part, deservingly so. But that was sort of a cool little thing, at least for people that live in the region that we do. I just really loved that game.
Are you from Minnesota originally?
I am. Okay. I kind of moved all around up until the last few years. I kind of found my way back here, but I am originally from here.
Okay.
For better or mostly for worse, because I hate winter, but I think I'm stuck here at this point. There's no escaping.
I love winter, so haha.
Yeah. See, I don't hate it. I just hate driving in it. And since I have to drive every day to work, it kind of ruins it for me.
I don't drive. That's why I have the leisure of enjoying it. If I drove, I could easily hate it.
Yeah. But like, summers here and falls here are amazing. So I guess in the end, it's worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the last one I got, I believe. The other ones I had were either ones that you mentioned or were on your list. So I think that's about going to wrap it up for this week.
Sounds good.
So anything you want to plug this week coming up on the site?
I'm Not this week, but keep your eyes open. I'm going to be doing a series on Color Dreams games and Wisdom Tree games, defending why they're not as bad as people give them credit for. People kind of shit on them, but I think that they deserve a little bit of praise. And I'm going to do a little video series. Not video series. I'm going to do one video on those. Yeah. Don't forget to also check out the rest of the stuff that's going up this week. I'm sure Mandy and Josh will be putting up a few things, and I don't know what do you have anything in the works right now?
Kind of. I know I teased last week that I was going to put up a video of a really obscure piece of hardware that ended up being a lot bigger project than I intended, because I was really just going to do a little overview and maybe a quick shot of it in action. But it got out of hand quickly, very quickly, and I ended up making a modded portable PS2 out of it.
That's awesome.
Which I have all the footage captured, but it's going to be a lot of work to make a full video, but I do plan on putting it together. It turned out a lot more ridiculous than I ever imagined it would. There was maybe some alcohol involved, I can't say. But I'll tease it with this. I may have packaging taped one of those magnifying glasses for the fat Game Boys onto this unit at some point.
That's awesome.
So that's there, and it will be up eventually. Other than that, I'm going to focus on family this week, and I don't get to see my mom and sister much, especially together, so I'm probably going to disappear for a couple days after this podcast goes up, but next week probably be up and at it again.
All right.
So we'll have something up next week. I don't know if we're going to try to stick to Sundays. I think we just, for whatever reason, couldn't get something together by this Sunday, but maybe by this coming Sunday we'll have another show, but if not, we'll have something together at some point during the week next week.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this is a great episode. A lot of good discussions, a lot of fun discussing these very cherished games that I think a lot of the retro gaming community will enjoy hearing about.
I think so.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's getting late, at least for me. I got to be up and work in the morning, so I'm going to go drink a beer and crash.
I'm going to do a couple more things for our Sister Side Geek Party tonight after I make supper. And then I'm going to crash too, because I got my Thanksgiving for my family tomorrow.
Excellent. Well, happy Thanksgiving to you, sir. Thank you for joining me today.
Happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there.
Yes, I am
Unless
thankful
you're not
for...
American. If you're some kind of dirty foreigner, then I'm not wishing you a happy Thanksgiving. But have a good Thursday, you know.
I don't even know what to say to that. That's terribly insensitive.
I think you should say, stay classic.
Yeah. That's all I got. Until next week, stay classic.